different goals I set for myself, how I was going to achieve a lot of these different things. And if you asked me at the time, what do I want to do? I wanted to build businesses. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, but that was really what I was passionate about. And I was really pushing very hard along these lines. Now, for many of you that have already crossed into the second phase of your life, at some point, and Sister Didi touched on this as well, certain things happen to us, life happens. Be a series of small events that help reframe how we think about life. You could refer to it as middle-age crisis, but it's God really redirecting our path. Now, for me, 2007, leaving, and I got shot by armed robbers. Nearly died, had to be flown out to the US, and went through a couple surgeries, many months of physical therapy so I could walk again. And it was really a transformational time for me. And I remember very clearly, after being shot, lying on the ground, and this is 200 meters from where 4 Points is today, and after getting over the shock that I've been shot, I'm alive, what was interesting is that the first emotion that went through my mind was that of anger. Why anger? Anger because I had spent a big chunk of the earlier part of my career working long hours, building experience, and I'm a relatively frugal person, so I had been saving tight. I was going to have this great nest egg in the future that I would use to enjoy life. And the anger was that, wait a minute, you mean all this money I've been saving in my account, I wouldn't get, I would get to enjoy it. And I was saying I should have actually been spending that money on life experiences. I should have been spending more time with family, and it really shook me. When I was in the US as well, I went through many months of depression because I didn't think I was going to walk again. I was quite concerned. He actually had a bottle of champagne delivered to me in Chicago where I was, with a note that said, I can only open this bottle when I start walking again. And this really had an impact on me and really got me the importance of relationships at any point in your life. How do you build and maintain it going through tough times? Now, during this time, I view this as God really trying to remake me. And I think God had of ourselves. And at this time, I was done, no more Nigeria. In fact, there was a period of 2 months I was refusing to eat Nigerian food, if you could believe it. I was very anti-Nigeria and moved to Senegal. And it wasn't as structured as let's move to Senegal. I got up and just packed my bag and moved. And my wife actually came a few weeks later because I think she was worried that something is wrong with my husband. He just moved to Senegal. She wanted to make sure I was okay, then moved with our kids to join me there. And I was happy, I was alive, walking the streets, engaging, and for me it was just a new beginning. This time in Senegal was the foundation for many things that came afterwards. I worked for a private equity fund there for free for 9 months. I worked for free because I was just happy to be there and then keep myself busy. And if I worked for a firm that was already established, I don't think I'd have learned as much as I did working for a firm that was just putting everything together. And if I fast forward down, what I learned then working for free was how to set up a private equity firm, which then became a basis for when I set up Sahel Capital afterwards. And that time birthed the 3 companies that two of which I co-founded with my wife that have come up today. And in thinking through the next steps, and if we think through life as well, many times people feel that the success that comes, it happens overnight. They see the public, but very few people see the struggle that goes into a lot of the building that happens. And I think understanding that struggle is very important. And in some ways, it's like a refining fire of us, better versions of ourselves that can have some impact in the lives of others down the road. And if I think of the past 10, 15 years, the past 5 years especially, life is tough. If I think of the journey I went through, raising capital requires lots of tenacity, many rejections. Everybody talks on LinkedIn in public about the great investments, doubled, tripled, new refinery opened, all the successes. But at the same time, underlying that, there are also the challenging investments, the deals that go bad, those that keep you up at night. And there are many times that I went through those investments that were not great, caused sleepless nights, and lots of pressure. And then there's a health issue, whether it's a personal health issue, that of your spouse, that of your children. And then you realize that that bad investment, that bad deal, that boss that was just giving you a hard time, really doesn't matter. The health matters, especially when it's that of your child. And then you relearn priorities, you build more resilience, you have more success, you grow more success, you grow. And at a certain point in time, I remember saying, this refining is too much. That I think I'm refined enough, I'm tired. And I said, I opted to remove myself from this refining fire because I said, I'm okay, I've had some success, I don't need much, that let me just go to a small city somewhere, preferably warm, preferably close to the beach. Let me just relax. I'm okay, I'm good. There's no problem, I'm okay. And around that time, that shook me. And I felt as if, using a football analogy, as if God was saying, do you want to remove yourself from the football pitch? That if you are saying you're really not ready to be used, maybe it's the time to go. And I had a few older friends of mine that passed away at this point, strong Christians, successful, and I actually got quite afraid. I was like, wait a minute, is God saying that if I now go to my beach, my nice house, that he's going to call me home? And I wasn't ready. I said, no, it's not the time. I'm not ready. You've given me 19 years more. I'm not ready. And then there was a second incident that happened as well. I met an older mentor friend of mine who really challenged me and said, the summary of what he says is, you think you've had some success, but there's so much more you can do on a bigger, larger scale to have more impact. Why are you thinking about this smaller vision and picture? And it really struck me because it just made me realize that, yes, I've spent a lot of time growing, building, but how should I really be thinking about this next phase of my life? Am I, the measuring sticks have changed. How am I impacting others? What does it mean? Who am I supporting? And it's at this point in time that when I started to reflect, and there are certain things I applied to my life over the past 10 years, especially the last 5, that I think could be helpful to think about how you should reframe or think about your life in sort of this next journey. The first one for me was, I reflected and said, when I'm much older, 18, 90, how many more years do I have? What would really be important to me? And I felt, family. Ultimately, there's no point having success and being by yourself and lonely. It's a poor way to live out your later years. And for me, family is two things. One is children. Now, many of us think that your young adult children have left your house, you have an empty nest. I think that's really a misnomer. I think that's when they really need you more. And so reframing how you spend your time, coaching, enabling, helping them get through their own challenges, through the experiences you've gone through is very powerful. And it's very important because even though for those of you that have young adult children feel that they don't have your time, they really need you. And so for me, I've tried to do a few things. So for example, the past 3 years, my son and I have done to pick where we go, what we do, so I can really spend the time getting to understand how valuable for me in many ways than I think for him. And it's interesting because my daughter now says I have not done any trips with her. When is our time? Or is the time coming? But I think spending quality time. And because this is also an inflection period where your relationship with your spouse can dissolve or it can grow stronger. And it's interesting because, and many of you who are married, we know that, doesn't matter how much you love your spouse, how many years you are together, there are always different arguments you go through at different points in time. And I remember at one point in time, and by the way, many of these arguments, when you're picking your spouse, the things that make you say, this is the best husband, this is the best wife, and later in life. In case you're wondering. But I said, you know what? I can't change my spouse, but I can change myself. And I actually try to spend more time trying to figure out what can I do better about myself? What things are triggering me? And then how do I actually now adjust myself? And what was interesting to me is that actually helped strengthen our marriage, got us closer together. And it's very important as you're building your relationship with your spouse to really look at yourself more than your spouse in terms of what you can do better. Lifelong learning, I'm a big believer in lifelong learning. I think as you transition through the phases of your life, it's so critical. And it's not just the technical bit, which is what many of us focus in the earlier years, is the softer issues that become more important as you get older. And softer issues mean you are changing yourself in many ways to get better at what you do so you can lead organizations more effectively, you can lead others. But those soft issues are also quite hard. And 5 years ago, I applied, got into the Eisenhower Fellowship Program that allowed me to travel around the US and learn about agriculture in the US and how it applies to other countries. It was very powerful. But each one of us should think through what are the soft issues where we're strong in, we're weak in, how can we strengthen that so that we become more effective as we get older? And this applies throughout life. Building support networks, so critical, especially for men. I think women do a better job building their networks and relationships for support. Men we don't do as good enough of a job doing this. And what do I mean by this? It's you get older, you become more senior. Who do you go to when you have problems and challenges, either at work or personally? And there's very few networks or people that have those kinds of relationships. So it's so critical. And for me, what I've found is that I've leveraged at different points in time or tried to build new networks. I have a running club, Road Warriors, that has been, whether it's exercise, social. I joined YPO for professional networks. I even joined Metropolitan Club a couple years ago. But for every one of us, it is really how do we build those support networks that allow us to go through different phases of our life, to learn small groups where we can go and be vulnerable in some ways to figure out how do we actually solve issues or problems. I remember in one challenging business situation I had about 6 years ago that was giving me sleepless nights. I went to an older mentor friend of mine and just said, I can't deal, this is what I'm going through. And what was interesting is he didn't give me solutions. He just said, let me tell you what I've been through, and just started giving me his own stories. And just knowing that somebody else has gone through those similar things and come out ahead was powerful enough for me to handle the challenges that I went through. Building up others, critical, because ultimately that scorecard is who comes after you in your organization, who comes after you in life. And if I think about the early part of my life, there were so many people that opened doors. And for me, it's how am I enabling that for others, enabling others live their own dreams. And then as we've gotten some success, it's great in a very structured fashion so that you know how you're giving, why you're giving. It becomes more sustainable in what you do. And there, we have a family foundation we set up with certain protocols on what we want to do, but just ensuring that for every one of us, as we decide, we can do this in a structured fashion. Now, thinking through all these issues and putting things in context, what has been so hard for me, and I think will be for many of us, is how do we surrender the scorecard? How do we leave behind? How do we embrace 4 more years I graduate, another 4 years I'm promoted, but as you get older, there's more uncertainty. And we need to get more uncomfortable with that uncertainty. We need to trust more. Trust more means we're relying more on God's strength versus ours. And we also need to trust that there's a story being written, our past experiences early in life as we are developing through our careers. There's a purpose that is impactful on others. And how we trust in God to ensure that those life experiences help inspire and build those that come after us. But it's not easy to give up control within that uncertainty. But I think that is part of the growth process that many of us are going through and will go through. Now, I think I went a little bit, okay, there's a slide that is not pushing up, but I'll talk to it. As just wrapping up, I think, thank you. What would you leave behind when your time comes? I think it's something we all need to think about. What are we going to leave behind? Because it was very clear to me 19 years ago that bank account was meaningless. Doesn't matter how large, how small, is meaningless. Earlier, you heard when you have a health issue, doesn't matter the bank account. So what is that legacy? And for me, there are a couple of things that come to mind. So one is faith passed on, but not just faith in itself. It is, what is the anchor that we want our children, our family members, colleagues to draw upon as they go through their own challenges in life? Because we all have challenges, but there needs to be an anchor. How are you ensuring your children and others that come after you understand and have that anchor that they're going to use to navigate the trials of life? The other is, what seeds are you planting for that grow from a generational perspective? And how are you changing lives so that those come after you are celebrating you not for your professional accomplishments, but how you have changed their lives for the better? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that deserves another applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Wineley. Very succinct, and I think I speak for everyone who's watching and who's in the room that we're glad that you're still here with us after those encounters, and we trust that you'll be here for many more years with us. Thank you so much for sharing. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. But before I just share some highlights from what Mr. Wineley shared, I'd like to remind us, welcome for some of us who are just joining, that it is the platform Nigeria, and it's the Africa 40 over 40 edition. And we actually have an incredible lineup. Some of the gems that our speakers are sharing today, please, the hashtag is the platform second half. Hashtag the platform second half. Let's let the platform trend, all right? And to those who are online, keep your comments coming in. Thank you for joining us. So some highlights. We saw the pillars that he shared. And very interesting when he was speaking about family. I remember about the story of how he met his wife and how, you know, he left investment banking, you know, and came back to Nigeria. And people kept asking, you know, why do you credit capital? I remember as spouses, somebody or a few applauses went up. So I am hoping that a lot of us took some insight from that to see we also have to look at ourselves and find where we need to improve rather than always pointing the finger at the next person. All right? Do we agree? Okay, all right. I just needed to be sure. And then he also talked about building others. He talked about building others and networks. Very important. Navigate a particular season of his life. And I think that's why we're here today. And that's why with speakers, leaders like himself and the other speakers that we'll be hearing from today, maybe not too much from a distance because there's some proximity in the room. And today, if you're joining us online, then you're also in the room virtually. Very, very important point. Thank you for sharing that. And then he talked about structured philanthropy. Some people are at the point where they're thinking they want to transition or they want to have legacy. Remember that the theme of the platform Nigeria today is unlocking the second half advantage. So Mr. Wuneli has told us that there is an advantage in the second half, especially when we trust God. So please tell the person next to you, make sure you're trusting God in the second half. Because that's the only way you would get through it. All right, thank you very much. We're moving on to our next speaker. Has many hats or many titles. She's a doctor. Also, Elebute Odunsi is a distinguished consultant hematologist and the CEO of the Cell Root Cancer Center and Specialist Hospital, which is a landmark in Nigeria's private oncology specialist healthcare space. Her career represents the rare convergence of
somewhere where being acknowledged was not actually the right place for me to be. And I think that was the beginning of the niggle. So anyway, I went on, and with my first consultant job for about 8 to 10 years at St. George's, and then I got an opportunity to go and set up a center at King's College Hospital, London. It was a very incredible experience for me. I was basically called by the Department of Health to go and set up a center for a who could no longer work and be the breadwinner for the family. It's a big, big problem. But thank God, we're just over 5 years now, and this is who we are now, seeing all these patients. We're now doing not just oncology care, but a few other specialties. And just a few minutes on the fact that I think when God asks you to do something or calls you to do something and you respond, and I think like Tara's book has said, building beyond, is that I think he usually has a bigger, because for me, even building Marcel Ruth from scratch, contractors and everything, I never built anything in my life, right? That was huge. But now I realize actually that was just a stepping stone. Even these 3 buildings and all that, it was just a stepping stone. Is the impact and the legacy. And the legacy for me now is in helping to drive excellent standards of training for us here in Nigeria. My time is up, and I'm just going to quickly finish. I just have 1 more minute. And so we've really pushed, and I'm very grateful to the previous Minister of Health for supporting us. So we are the first private hospital to be allowed to train oncology residents in Nigeria. And we've got, thank you. And we're also now going to train oncology nurses, oncology pharmacists, but also through my journey, I realized just how much women need to support each other more. And so I called on 15 other women, all very senior in the healthcare sector, and we started something called the Women in Healthcare Network. And when I say that God, when he wants you to do something, is never small, I thought we were going to be like 20, 25 women. From time to time, we're going to have lunch in Ikeja Club or something. To cut a long story short, when we launched, there were 300 women in the room. Yeah. At our second annual conference, there were 500 plus women in the room. And Ibukwa Awashika came because her sister, who is a speech therapist, flew from the UK. About 15 women flew from all over the world. This is 2 years into this thing. Something I thought there would be 20 people. We now have over 300 paid members. We have an Abuja chapter. We have a UK chapter. About to launch a US chapter, and some states want chapters. We've just started doing a mentorship program. I'm going to leave you with this question. That question in your mind, that feeling of, should I be doing anything more? Just go for it. Because it's God speaking to you, and he will give you everything that you need to make it happen and more. Thank you very much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can keep clapping till she returns to her seat. Thank you very much, Professor, for that. Please have your seat. And those who are online, please let's see the emojis in the comments. What a daunting task, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? And she's been able to overcome, and she's delivering real impact. I think there was a sigh in the audience when she mentioned 12 years ago when she was 50. And the room went quiet, very quiet. So you can already guess her age. But she's still doing incredible work. Ladies and gentlemen, please. I noticed that there's something about the name Marcel with some of our speakers today. And I won't say too much, but Marcel, Ruth Center, I think there's another Marcel in the room. There's another speaker in the room who has a story with a similar name as well, but very interesting. Alignment was one of the key highlights from that presentation. It's important to align. And I don't know how many of us are noticing the importance of spouses. Are we? The spousal relationship. She gave credit to her husband who supported. And when Mr. Uneli was speaking, he was also making references to his wife and how some of the companies they co-founded and how they've worked together over time. So very interesting. Be mindful of how you select your spouse. If you haven't done that just yet, and you're either watching or in the audience. All right. She also talked about team. Very important in getting the right people that would carry the vision. And I think that also ties into what Mr. Wuneli talked about when he said building networks and relationships. So people are very, very critical in the second half of your journey. She also talked about God, the importance of God, the place and position of God in doing business, especially in our very interesting climb. And then Mr. Wuneli also referred to trusting God in your second half. So the hashtag remains hashtag the platform second half. So all these gems, please make sure you're sharing across the different social media platforms. And those of us who are joining online, please let's ensure that we're also putting in the comments as well. We're streaming or we're showing live on channel 196 on DSTV, please don't forget. And then on GoTV, I have been informed that we are on channel 49. Channel 49, GoTV, and 196 DSTV. Okay, this is the platform Nigeria, and it is unlocking the second half advantage, transition, impact, and legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be introducing our next speaker this morning. Our next speaker is Mr. Ugochukwu Obichukwu, also known as Ugo Dre. Ugochukwu Obichukwu is the founder and CEO of Nairametrics Financial Advocates, a leading authority on Nigeria's financial and economic sectors. A chartered accountant with extensive experience, Ugo Dre has spearheaded significant business transformations and strategic reorganizations, enhancing operational efficiency and profitability. His experience in covering the capital market, the economy, and geopolitics makes him one of the leading resource persons for delivering macroeconomic insights. His leadership at Nairametrics has transformed the platform into a globally recognized source for economic analysis and financial literacy. Ugo Dre is an eloquent speaker and host of popular financial radio shows on Lagos Talks 91.3 FM and Classic 97.3 FM. He also hosts several influential podcasts covering the capital market and investor education. His influential work in the financial sector has earned him several awards and recognitions, including the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2023. A gentleman who's also shaping that sector, financial sector, in Nigeria and Africa, giving a voice, leveraging new media or unconventional media. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us here at the platform Nigeria, please join me as I welcome to the podium Mr. Ugochukwu Obichukwu. You can make the applause louder till he gets here.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I can see so many beautiful faces. So glad to have you all here. Thank you so much to the podium for inviting me to this session. It is quite an honor. I hope I have my slides on. Okay, so I have less than 20 minutes. So for those who know me, I tend to speak a lot, so please indulge me. The image you have here is the image of a lady. As you can see on the left, she was a little younger, on the right, much older. So on the left, this lady was in her mid-40s, and she was looking back at her life and thought perhaps maybe what was ahead was not as smooth as what was behind. And then this lady decided to go back to university at that age just to study so that she can prepare for the life that was waiting for her. And then by the time she got to 60, she retired from civil service. And then just a month later, started another job that took her on for another 15 years of her life. Because she retired at the ripe age of 60, as she was then in the civil service, so she had another 15 years where her kids had to then force her to stop working. This lady, incidentally, was in my office a few weeks ago when I was visited by members of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. I don't know if any of you guys have had any of those visits lately. They are very busy these days. In fact, I heard that they also do customer visits. Go and visit your customer. I'm like, wow. But anyway, so they were visiting one of their customers, which happened to be me. And then this lady decided she also wanted to be there at the ripe age of 80-something. If you have guessed, you probably guessed this lady is my mother. Yes. So I hope she's not watching because she still lords over me. But the point is, she basically, at that age of 40-something, taught me it was important to plan for the second half of my life. And because when I look back at it, I realized that all through her life, even post-retirement, she was never really dependent on any of her children. And so I asked myself a very important question. Who do I want to be after retirement? And then I thought, okay, there are typically 5, 6 pathways that you can choose. It all depends on which one you think fits you more. And so we're going to talk about them. The first pathway is family-focused retirement abroad. This is basically somebody who, or in their 30s, you married, you probably have your children abroad, or you send them abroad for school and then they graduate and then they probably end up working there. So these are the guys who jackpot way back or jackpot at some point and they end up working there, and then you turn out to be one of those grandparents who the children bring them over, maybe to the US or the UK to come on leave, and then you retire there. So I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people, because to be in this pathway, you have to be family focused. So you must have children that actually want you to come and stay with them. Not that you go there and come and start causing problems. So you want children that want you to come and start, to come there. And then you have grandchildren that also want to have you around as well. Of course, you should also be ready to play a very active role in the life of the children, the grandchildren. Because when your children go to work, as they usually do, you're not in Nigeria where you have a butler, you have house helps, you have drivers. You do everything yourself. So you find out that you'd at some point realize that you're the house help of the house. And then to the guy, at some point he gets really tired and then he turns into an Uber driver and starts to drive Uber and then talks to anybody he sees he's carrying around. I don't know how you guys have encountered some of them. They really talk a lot. So, but that is one pathway. And it's actually a very good pathway. But to do that again, your children must, have very good, perhaps residency abroad or they're citizens abroad. And then you must have very papers as well that can allow you live. So if that is your pathway, raise your hands up. Is that the pathway you want for yourself? It's a very lucrative pathway. Okay. The second path is you're just the guy, you've worked all your life, retired at 60, I think 65 these days. And then you said, you know what, you're just done with work. I don't want to work anymore. I hear this a lot from Gen Zs, by the way. I don't tire for work. So maybe these days, retirement is now your 20s, and then you start working in your 50s. But anyway, so you're in your 60s and you don't want to work anymore. You're tired of working. You just want to live off your retirement and vibe like this Baba here, as you can see him. So But to do that means you must actually have very good retirement savings. You must probably be working in a multinational at the moment where they pay heavy amounts. I hope you're not a banker, because a banker, this doesn't belong to you. Because I don't know how much they pay you that you can save enough that you live off your pension. But people like this typically have hefty sums kept as their pensions. And then they can live off that pension for the rest of their life and travel around the world with their spouse and don't bother about working ever again. Is this the pathway you want for yourself? Who wants this pathway? Nobody. Okay. The third pathway is post-retirement professional relevance. And this basically is you have looked at your life, you've walked over the years, you've garnered a lot of experience for yourself. You've worked in several firms, you've acquired a lot of skills that is valuable, skill that is not just valuable today, but valuable for the work tomorrow, the future. And when you retire, you also don't want to stress yourself. You probably don't want to own, your hospital like Prof here. I hear Prof said that she had to, she was involved in building the hospital from the scratch and all that. You don't want to do all that. You probably just want to be a consultant, be speaking big grammar. You go into, offices, you do conferences, you sit down, you just be speaking grammar and be solving problems. And then you get paid. Probably all you probably need is just 3 or 4 jobs a year, and then you're okay. It's a very lucrative way to retire as well. But to do this, you need to have the skills that people really want. You should also have experience, work experience, and then you should have the right network. Because if nobody knows you and you don't have a very good background, no one is going to hire you to come and consult. Right? So that is the third pathway. The fourth pathway is the financial independent pathway. You don't want to work for anyone. You don't want to consult with anybody. You just want to be an investor. Somebody who just sits down, picks up his mobile phone, checks his portfolio, or open your laptop in the mornings, in your house, wherever, probably even in a hotel, anywhere you like to hang out. Open your laptop and then you check investments on your portfolio, and then you live off your investments. That's a very sweet life. By the way, if, for example, you wanted to retire and you wanted to spend maybe 2 million naira every month till you die, say 10 years now, it's probably when you want to retire, you want to spend 2 million naira every year till you die, you probably need to save about 90 million naira today at roughly 10% interest rate per annum. That should accumulate to about 220 to 30 million in another 10 years. And then you can start to draw from that for the next 30 years till you die. So you can imagine how much investment you need to start making now. And that is to earn 2 million naira every month till you die. And remember, I've not factored in inflation, I've not factored in exchange rates, which always happens. I've factored any of those things. Give you an idea of how much money you need to keep. So for you to be somebody who wants to retire without having to work at all for anyone or be an entrepreneur, just be somebody who just lives off his portfolio. There are certain things that you need to do. And this is, you must be somebody who has sizable savings and somebody who is also very investor savvy. You're in equities, local or foreign, or you probably even invest in cryptocurrencies. Anything that gives you steady returns without you having to work. So this is another pathway that you can choose to retire. The fifth pathway is being a boardroom or a board member or have a board and advisory career. And we're beginning to see this happen a lot with a lot of people who have vast experience in the corporate world. These people are highly sought after, even after retirement, because nobody wants to leave them. Nobody wants them to go away with the knowledge and skill that they have. These people also have built solid network over the years. They know a whole lot of people. They can open doors where doors are typically shut. These guys have the ears of the powers that be. And so if you find yourself in this kind of circle, or you're not in this circle yet, you can build your way into this circle, starting from today, especially if you're a young person. Where do you work? What sort of impact do you have where you work? How do people perceive you? How have you built yourself, your portfolio, your career? What kind of network do you have? Who have you influenced? Who are the people that you're mentoring today, not mentoring when you retire? Who are the people that look up to you? Because these are the guys that will call you when you've retired to come and be a board member. And trust me, being a board member is really sweet. You can ask anybody who is a board member. It's a very busy job. You're typically busy. I know some people who don't do more than 5, take more than 5 board seats anywhere, because it can actually be onerous. But it can be also quite lucrative, because that membership alone can pay you till you die, just by being a board member. There are some people who, even after being board members, they continue to pay them stipends forever. So that is another interesting pathway that you can decide to follow. The 6th and final pathway is being an entrepreneur. As you may have guessed, that's the pathway that I chose. And being an entrepreneur means you decide early that you want to be your own person. I see a lot of young people today who just, you're 21, 22, perhaps you look at, Mark Zuckerberg and think you want to just drop out of school, want to just drop out of school and start your own Facebook. Hunger will fire you. People don't realize that, yes, you can build your own empire very young, but you all don't have the same route. Sometimes you have to work for people, learn, toil, be an entrepreneur, like Ndidi said. That's what you have to be. And then start to grind and all yourself and learn and acquire what you need to do, what you need to acquire to be that entrepreneur that you want to be. Most of the successful entrepreneurs today became entrepreneurs in their 40s, some even in their 50s. And you've seen Prof here, she's an entrepreneur in her 50s as well, going into her 60s. So being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you must start when you're in your 20s, but it's also a pathway to retirement. But if you know you want to be an entrepreneur when you retire, you also have to start now. I started in my late 30s. While I was having my 9-to-5 job, I was having my own side gig as well, because I knew that was what I wanted to do from my 50s. I knew that I was going to be my own person, have my own business in my 50s, and probably retire from there on. So if this is the path you want to follow, it requires a lot of work, it requires that you have strong management skill, it requires that you have the right team, that you build, you have the right patient, you have the right mindset for it. You're very courageous as well, because entrepreneurship is not that easy. It comes with a lot of challenges, particularly challenges that can often break you down. Each of these pathways have downsides. Not to take too much time, I think this slide is going to be made available, but there are downsides for each of the pathways. It depends on which one you want to take. Everything in life has advantages and disadvantages. But one thing that I also know that is very clear is retirement doesn't mean work stops for you at any point in time. It's just, you're only just retiring from one thing and moving on to another. And as you can see, look at the richest men in the world today. Check out their ages. Larry Ellison, 81. Bernard of Louis Vuitton, he's in his 70s. Warren Buffett, 94, still chairing meetings. Of course, our own Aliko Dangote, 67, recently announced that he wants to open another refinery. When some of us, if we have his money like this, it's just to be touring the whole world. Work for who? There are some people already, they just have $1 million. They say, I know they work for anybody, Baba. But I don't work for anybody, I beg. I won't just do my own. Waiting. Abi? But here is somebody who is 67. Everything is achieved, he's still going on because he just wants to continue to impact. That's what he wants. And of course, you also have Femi Otedola as well. That's his age, 62. Mike Adenuga, 71. Are these guys retired? Are they retired? Are they tired? So who are you then? So that's why we all have to start now and determine which of the pathways that we want for ourselves. Do you want to be the guy who just, you know what, I don't want stress, just make sure that I put my children in very good school, take them abroad, and go and live with them and start stressing their life abroad. And then when you start driving your Ubers, you start disturbing everybody, gisting with all sorts of people, play music for them, blah, blah. It's also a good way to live. Or you probably just want to be an entrepreneur and face entrepreneurship life forever. Or you want to be, room advisor, or you want to be an expert, a consultant. It all depends. But this, I think, are the pathways. And you can actually combine any of them. You don't have to be either. You don't have to be one. You can combine. You can be an entrepreneur and also make yourself available, to different boards and advise companies that are just starting up. But whichever pathway you want to take, you got to start now to determine which one suits you. And that's why I have this decision matrix here. Just guide you. Figure out which one, where do you think you can be? And then adopt that now and start to follow through. So, what do you do today? Determine your retirement identity, which is either part 1, part 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Choose your path or paths. Build the assets that you require. For example, if you want to be a consultant, you need skills, you need skill sets. So you need to continue to update yourself, continue to go through and have certifications all the time. Start now and then stay consistent. Consistency is one of the keys to success. And then more importantly, like Mr. Winley said, stay healthy. Because there's no point doing any of this if you're not healthy. Health, like they always say, is wealth. There is no point doing this if you're not healthy. So you got to stay healthy. I'll leave you with this picture. Nobody has seen this one on the left before, but this was me. This was me several years ago. I think I was 36, 7 here, with my lovely jet black hair, thinking about life when I'm 50. And that's me on the right on my 50th birthday, all gray now, and looking a lot more excited than I was when I was much younger. As CEO of Nairametrics, I believe that I'm just starting. My job is to create wealth through information. So that means my mission won't end because there's just so many people to create wealth for through information. And I hope that I've just informed you today, and that information I've given you will help you create wealth for you and for your retirement identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ugochukwu, for that. Welcome for those who are joining us again. This is Platform Nigeria, and we just heard from one of our speakers, Mr. Ugochukwu Obichukwu. It's the unlocking the second half advantage, transition, impact, and legacy. It's the Africa 40 over 40 edition. My name is Osaume Akenzwa, It's a privilege to be steering this event today. The hashtag remains the hashtag, the platform second half. So please do well to share comments across all media platforms so that the platform can actually trend today. On platforms, the platform. Can we do that? Can we ensure that we're sharing comments and thoughts from the platform across all the platforms? Is that a yes from us? That yes is a bit weak. Is that a yes from us? All right. Thank you very much. I'd like to also recognize Miss Fela Durotoye. This is Tara Fela Durotoye, who's also in the room today. And she's been gracious to come with copies of her book, Building Beyond You. So if you're interested, please, I'm sure the books are available to my left, which is your right, in the foyer. And she will be signing some of those books as well. Another speaker today has come with books as well. And there's a lot of resource in the house, and I'm hoping that we can all leverage these resources that our incredible speakers have been magnanimous to share with us today. All right, so we saw the pathways that Mr. Ugodre shared. Pathways, very interesting pathways, and I'm sure that as he went through all those pathways, we were able to look at which one we fit into. And then there was that laughter in the room when he talked about the retirement plan of living abroad with your children or with family and going only when you are invited. I hope that that sinks with us for those who want to go with that particular pathway. But there were other pathways in entrepreneurship that he also shared. So a lot of options there, and I'm hoping and trusting that we'll be able to make the right decisions. He also talked about circles. Again, we see network recurring here in the presentations of our speakers. So the circles, skills, he talked about skills. How are we improving ourselves? A lot of people feel threatened today with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. But how are we improving ourselves? And what impact are you bringing to your organization, wherever it is you find yourself? Because I believe one thing is clear. All our speakers so far, at one point or the other, had the opportunity to work within organizations and gave their best, they excelled, they were exceptional, and they delivered impact. And that's why they're able to go on and find all of these interesting opportunities to create legacy. One more time, a round of applause for Mr. Gochukwu Obichukwu. All right, our next speaker today, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Babs Omotoa. Dr. Babs is a globally respected Nigerian business leader and the former CEO, MD of Nigeria LNG, which is one of Africa's largest and most successful energy companies. With more than 25 years of international experience, he has held senior leadership roles at the Royal Dutch Shell across Europe, Africa, North America, including serving as Global Vice President for Shell Upstream. He is the founding president of the Nigeria University of Technology and Management, the NUTM, which is a pioneering institution focused on developing Africa's next generation of technology, innovation, and business leaders. Omotoa is also a former global president of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply London, UK. He has also served on the boards of major organizations, including SPDC, Seplat Energy, WAGPO, and NESG. He currently serves on boards like the NMPC Limited and Stanbic IBTC Holdings. He is a strong advocate for ethical leadership, governance, and human capacity development. He is the author of the memoir, From Storeroom to Boardroom, copies of which he has come along with today, and he will be signing for those interested in buying. He is also, or has been, recognized with an honorary Doctor of Science degree for his contributions to industry and national development. He also runs a mentorship program, Meet and Learn with Dr. Omotowa. And very interesting in his career, he's had opportunities to encourage and promote local capacity development. So much so that in one of his previous positions, he was ready to put his job on the line to ensure that a local operator in Nigeria was given an opportunity to work with his organization. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome to the podium Dr. Babs Omotowa. We can do much better.
Thank you. This one as well. Okay. I hope you can hear me. Okay. So good morning, or still morning to everyone. I think special thanks, of course, to Pastor Oyemade, who has pulled the platform together over the past few years, and also to the organizing committee who have put together this excellent event. But also to all of you who have been able to put time aside today to join this session, and hopefully you are able to take a few things away from past speakers that have spoken earlier, a few things from myself and others that will speak after. So I think the subject for which I will be speaking, which most of the speakers have also spoken, is about unlocking the second half advantage. I think from that title, if you think about it, there must be a first half before there's a second half. And typically that first half is typically the time one spends in a career. For some people, it's in an entrepreneurial capacity. For some people, it's working for organizations. Some people spend 10 years, some people spend 25. I know people who have spent 40 years working. And then after a career, which is the first half, then the second half is typically post-retirement. And every time I think about this topic, what comes to mind, of course, is a football analogy. And I'll be using that football analogy to share a few thoughts and also share a few of my stories as well within the time interval that I have. It could be dangerous talking about football in Nigeria because many people have different clubs they support. I don't know whether there are Arsenal fans in the audience. Okay, a few Arsenal fans. So just to assure you that our prayers are with you, that this year will be a different year. I think the key thing about football is, one of the key things about football is, no matter what you do in the first half, you may be winning in the first half, you may be losing in the first half, but the opportunity the second half gives you is also one that you can change the fortunes of what you have done in the first half. And an example I think about is in 1996, Nigeria was playing in the Olympics. For those who can remember, we were playing against Brazil, and by the first half, Brazil was leading 3-1. Many people have the game was over, but the Nigerian team came back and defeated Brazil 4-3 at the end of the second half. And I think what that says, firstly, is that you must play in the second half. If you don't play, you are not going to have an opportunity to really win the match. And playing in itself also gives you an opportunity to look at some of the things you did well in the first half, some of the things you didn't do well in the first half, and then think about what you can do to go better in the second half of the game. So the first thing I would say is that you have to play in the second half. I have known people who, after retirement, decided that they were no longer going to do anything more. They had given it all their all in the first half. And what you find is that those who don't play in the second half They say when you are not active anymore, you gradually start to deteriorate. And so it's very important that you are determined to play in the second half. But the second half is a different game as well. It's not the same game as the first half because you have learned a bit about your opponent, you've learned a bit about your strengths, your weaknesses, you've learned a bit around the networks you have built, and you have an opportunity in the second half to make those changes and be different. And what I think is important, I will say about this second half is that you must prepare from the first half. Coaches don't wait until the second half before they start preparing for the second half. In my own case, I started preparing for post-retirement 15 years before I retired. 15 years to retirement, I started to think about what I was going to do after retirement. And it's very important to do that because there may be a lot of things you need to do to prepare for that second half. So in my own case, the first thing to do was to determine what did I want to do after retirement. And you know, most people will have thought after retirement, I will go and look for an oil block or an oil license, start an oil and gas company. But when I thought about it very well, I realized that what will make me happy is actually education, teaching, and being in the space where I can help the next generation to thrive and do better than we did. What thinking of it early enabled me to do then was to start thinking, if I wanted to be a teacher, what are some of those things I need to do to prepare to be a teacher? One was I had to go back to school and complete a PhD program. The other was I thought I needed to write a book to use that as an opportunity to mentor and coach. So the point being that once you think of it very early, it gives you enough time to think about what do I need to do to prepare myself for that time that is coming. And some may ask, why did I think of education? Why didn't I go back into oil and gas? You know, one of the things I found in life was that things that actually give fulfillment are a lot of times not things we do for ourselves, but things we do for others. So sometimes in 2017, I got a call. I was in Holland at that time. I got a call from a lady. She said she was calling from the US, and she called her name, Mrs. XYZ. She asked whether I knew her. I said, I don't know that name. She said she was my student when I taught after my NYC. I taught for 2 years after NYC. So I said, of course, I can't remember you. You were not Mrs. then, and you were not living in the US then. So she said she had been trying to reach me to tell me something, and I said, what was it? So she said, look, when you were teaching us, I hated mathematics. I just didn't like mathematics at all. But when you came, you were patient with us. You tried to explain things very, very well. You took extra time, even after school hours, to stay with us and teach us. And I gradually started to pick interest in mathematics. And you left before we went for our GCE. And after GCE, I then did mathematics and scored an A in mathematics. But that enabled me to do systems engineering in the university. And today, I'm a systems manager in one of the top IT companies in the world. She said, because of the impact you had, ever since, the password for every device I have ever had always had your name in it. And I thought, and I thought there's nothing that could be as fulfilling as that the little seed you sowed in somebody enables them to reach their potential and are doing very, very well. So that for me is the kind of motivation I get whenever I see the opportunity to make an impact. And so education for me was the key and the opportunity. And secondly, I had also seen, of course, working in corporations, in big multinationals, that those who have had access to quality education have been able to try and achieve significantly. One of the biggest difference between those who go on to lead organizations, those who go on to make huge impact in organizations, is the quality of their education. And it was clear to me that in Nigeria, we needed a lot more work on that quality of education. So, as I said, first thing is that you have to play in that second half. to prepare early, start to think of what you want to do, what gives you joy, what gives you motivation, and then focus on that, prepare for that as you move along. What I also think is very important in the second half of life, what you do should have purpose, should have a meaning. The first half of your life is typically about yourself. You are trying to reach your height in whatever career you have. If it's in your businesses, you are trying to make a significant impact in those businesses, grow it to the height that you need to grow it. But in the second half of your life, it needs to be more about things that have meaning, things that have impact. And I would say, by and large, impact is typically more about things you do with others, not things you do for yourself. And so for my own case, I then went into education, as I said, with that purpose in mind. And together with a few colleagues on the board of trustees, we started to build a new university in Nigeria called the Nigerian University of Technology and Management. And for this university, what we were trying to solve for was that we did notice that quite a lot of graduates were coming out of Nigerian universities, and the labor market was really, especially industries, was not really taking as much of them as possible. And part of it was that in Nigerian universities, by and large, there was a lot of things about teaching methods of memorization and regurgitation that didn't really teach people about critical thinking, problem solving, those sort of skills that makes you more impactful. So we wanted to also build a university that will be in the top 50 in the world, that will enable more Nigerians to have access to that sort of quality education, so they don't have to go outside Nigeria. Not many people can also afford that, but if we can build a university here in Nigeria with that sort of quality, then a lot more people will have access to that, and a lot more Nigerians will be able to go forward to really make huge impact across the continent. So having purpose in what you do in the second half of life really makes a big difference, because purpose will inspire you, it will give you motivation, and you will see in the output a lot of value that you are creating. Just to give two quick examples. So 2 years ago, we took a young girl called Mary. Mary was one of the girls that were kidnapped in Chibok in 2014. And we brought her into the university on a full scholarship for a postgraduate program for 1 year. During this 1 year, Mary, of course, interacted well with her colleagues, about 60 of them in that particular class. She interacted with her faculty, who are typically faculty from Ivy League universities, Oxford, Stanford, MIT, Harvard. This exposure in a very conducive environment allowed Mary to start to come out of her shell. When Mary first came to the school, she could barely talk, she could barely look anyone in the eye. But this 1 year of transformation was hugely impactful on Mary. And today, Mary not only works as an analyst in a commodity stock exchange, but Mary has an NGO, or has a startup that she started for women in the North, whereby Mary is able to access women who are not allowed to leave their husband's home in the North. 150 of them she's starting with. And these women who in their idle time make a lot of things like sweaters, baskets that they just keep in the house. She's been able to build an e-commerce platform for them, whereby the women are able to take pictures, put it on the e-commerce platform, sell and make money out of this. And one of the things we are looking at, of course, is that we understand that typically men, when they make money, they go and do other things. Women, when they make money, they take care of their children, their family. So we're going to be tracking the children of these women and also seeing how this is having impact on them. A few days ago, Mezoe and Ndidi was sharing with me last week that they were in Washington on a panel, and they had the Nigerian girl who was moderating the session and did a very good job. That Mezoe and Ndidi had to speak to her after the event. And guess what? She was one of our students that graduated from the university. So we felt very, very proud of that. And these are I mean, we have lots of stories. There are a few other of our alumni in the room who are doing very, very well. This for me is what gives me motivation, what gives me inspiration, and building this me and my colleagues on the board of trustees is one of those sort of things that create the legacies that we all talk about. When you think about legacies, what you think about is, what goes even beyond you. Legacies are not typically things you do about yourself. I doubt that in 20 years or 50 years time, anyone will remember Babs Omotowa was once MD of Nigeria LNG, but I'm sure in 100 years time, people will be talking about NUTM. If you think about some of the biggest universities in the world, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, they're probably 200 plus years old. It's actually a university in the UK that is over 800 years old. This is how long institutions like universities can stay. And so building this university in Nigeria, which we call the MIT of Africa, is one of those sort of things that will outlast all of us and will continue to have impact well into the future for future generations of Nigeria. And that's what you think about when you think about purpose and impact, is that you are trying to build something that will really outlast you and impact a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily mean in education, you could do it in anything. It could be businesses that you start up that helps to employ thousands of people or creates opportunity to support communities, or some is about supporting communities in your village. If I think about my father, my late father, his biggest legacies is not what he achieved personally, but every time I go to the village, I see the school he helped to build, I see the markets he helped to set up. Those are the things that have outlasted him, and those are the things that make people to remember him, not what he achieved in his personal life. So I would say, as you think about the second phase of life, you really need to think about it in that sort of way. What can I do to really impact life? Because it's what you do with people that people remember. Nobody remembers a lot what you achieved in your office, but what you're able to do with people, how you are able to make them feel, especially when you can empower them to really become much better versions of themselves, is what people will remember of you way beyond your time. So as I round up, I just want to leave you with this particular quote, that the second half of life is not accidental. You can't leave it to fate. Because if you leave it to fate, fate can put you in different directions. You have to be intentional about your second phase of life. In some cases, your second phase of life is probably about the same length of time as your first phase, your working career. And so, it has to be something you enjoy doing, something you really want to wake up in the morning and go after it. Because in those second phase of life, you will also face challenges. There are days in the university we're really struggling. We have things that we have to do. We don't have enough resources to do it. And you still have to wake up in the morning and still go. And trust in God that God will provide you the solutions when what you are doing is really for the good of others, not about yourself. So intentionality, I think, is very important as you think about your second phase of life. I think it's important to start thinking of it early. So don't think you are too far away from retirement or you are too close to retirement. Think of, what will I like to do when I come to that stage in my life? What do I enjoy doing? What will give me inspiration to wake up in the morning? Because, let me be honest to you, waking up in the morning at 20, 25 is different from waking up in the morning at 60, 65. It starts becoming, a bit tougher. And you have to then wake up to something that really motivates you, not something you are doing as a routine. So very, very intentional. Look for something that gives you motivation and joy, something you enjoy doing. Make sure it has purpose. If there's no purpose in it, then there is no real value. Life cannot be to hear about yourself alone. It has to have meaning. It has to have purpose. And when you think about that, it helps you to find those things that will make an impact and will really help transform you. I have found this as very important in the second phase of life, and I hope you picked up one or two things in what I have said that may help you as you all look into the second phase of life. And for those also in the second phase of life already, I hope also you find things that really motivate you as you go along in the more difficult journey than the journey of the first half. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. What a story. What gets you up every morning? Can you ask the person next to you, please? What gets you up every morning? Don't worry about the answer. All right. But some food for thought there. What gets you up in the morning? Don't wait till retirement before you start thinking actively, intentionally about those things that you truly care about and that would get you up in the morning when you get over 50, 60, perhaps 70. And we've seen examples that our speakers have shown, referred to. They are examples. And one more time, ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for our speakers here at the platform NG. That is Nigeria. All right, so I'd like you to also just wish somebody a happy Workers' Day. In Nigeria, we're celebrating the Workers' Day today. I know some people came in later after we started. If you're online, you can also put it in the comment. Happy Workers'. I would like to ask, ladies and gentlemen, that we put intentionality to that. Because when we say Happy Workers' Day, a lot of times we say it with levity. The work that Nigerians and Africans put day in, day out, against the odds, ensuring that they're going out there and they're doing what needs to be done to make sure that they can not just feed themselves, but also cater to their families, and I dare say from our speakers today, their communities. So look at that person again and say it like you mean it. Happy Workers' Day. And you can follow that statement with something else and say, well done. Well done. We don't say it anymore, but then we used to say you deserve your accolades. So please give them their accolades. All right. So a round of applause for yourselves. Yes, every African Nigerian worker who is tuning in, you deserve your accolades. All right. The platform Nigeria, the hashtag remains the platform second half. Please make sure that you're sharing comments across different media platforms and you're using that hashtag, the platform second half. And we're really proud of Mary. Thank you very much. And many more like Mary who are doing incredible things. Aren't you inspired, ladies and gentlemen? Aren't you inspired? I was listening to the speakers and I was saying to myself, this 40 in your 40s, I think it actually seems like it's far above 40s today. A lot of our speakers are maybe 20 years above 40. Some of them, approaching 20 years above 40. And yet they are still going strong. I don't think you saw anyone come up here looking weak, looking despondent. And it's in the same Africa and Nigeria, ladies and gentlemen. So we don't have excuses. I'm not mounting pressure, but I'm clean from the inspiration that our speakers are providing today. So look at the person next to you and say, you can also do it too. Yeah, you can also do it. It's not over. You're not old. You're not too old. Okay. All right. We're showing on GoTV channel 49 and then on DSTV channel 196. Remember, Dr. Babs came with some books from storeroom to boardroom. I was listening to him, one of his interviews, and talking about how he started from the storeroom. And a lot of people found it very inconvenient to be working in the storeroom, but he stuck through and then became the CEO eventually. So he has some copies and he will be signing them. So if you're interested in getting some, please make sure you get a copy copy before you leave. Also reminding us that Mrs. Tara Fela Durotoye is in the house and has come with copies of her book as well, Building Beyond You. These are resources that we should take advantage of. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have the platform going strong. There are going to be questions. There's a panel conversation in the next minutes after I introduce our next speaker, and we have now is going to be moderating leading sourcing company for educational, lifestyle, office, and humanitarian aid supplies in Nigeria, with a presence in 6 states of the country, serving over 500 companies across 28 states in Nigeria. She is passionate about learning and development, and she has been a facilitator of soft skills in entrepreneurship programs. She has served on mentoring programs over the years, mentoring other female entrepreneurs. She started her 14-year career in the oil and gas industry in 1986. Do you remember that, Dr. Elebute, in 1986, a very key date as well. Okay. During which she worked in various strategic departments and resigned in the year 2000. Bold move, I like to say. Bold move, and you will know why shortly. To pioneer the concept of a one-stop back-to-school store in Lagos with the opening of her first retail store at Onikon on September 9th, 2000. SKLD currently operates 7 retail outlets across Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, including an online back-to-school store and 6 other business locations across Nigeria. Over the last 25 years, Temilola has driven a very innovative and dynamic team towards achieving remarkable growth in her company. She achieved this by expanding SKLD's wholesale division with the launch of Marcel Hughes Apparel. You see that? Okay. Marcel Hughes Apparel, established in 2009. Nigeria's flagship uniform brand, serving over 500 schools nationwide, and also establishing a garment production facility employing over 100 garment workers and producing over 5,000 garments per month. SKL further diversified into humanitarian aid supplies to international NGOs such as UNICEF, Save the Child, AHNI, and others. The distributorship and corporate services division were added in recent years. Today, SKLD delivers 3 categories of products, namely school, office, and lifestyle, to 4 main sectors: consumers, education, corporate organizations, and humanitarian aid NGOs, through its 5 business divisions: retail, educational supplies, corporate services, humanitarian aids, and distributorship. Temilola has received several awards in recognition of her leadership and impact. Notably, she received the International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge Foundation Award in India in 2019, and in 2023 was honored as Education Business Leader by the Africa Economic Builders Forum in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. In 2025, she received the Excellence in Succession Planning Award from Business Day at the My Family, My Business Summit, and Legacy Award at the Visionary Leaders Conference, recognizing her impact on leadership and business continuity. In November 2025, Temilola formally handed over leadership of SKLD to her successor, marking a new chapter in the company's journey. She serves on several boards, including SS Dental Clinic, COPE Foundation, focused on breast cancer awareness, Courage Education Foundation, that provides for the education of indigent children, and African Things, which is an SME. Temilola holds a BSc in Economics from the University of Lagos in 1982 and is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Insurance, London. She is married to Dr. Adebayo Adepetu, and they have 3 sons, Damola, Denola, and Ademide. I have to also point out that she has a YouTube page as well. And that's quite interesting because I did go through some of her content on her YouTube page. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me with a rousing applause as I welcome Mrs. Temilola Adetu to the podium at the platform Nigeria. You can make that louder as she makes her way to the podium. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? You can, okay. Sorry, why I asked that question? I have a bit of a challenge. I have hearing impairment, so I always have to ask. I wear hearing aids, but I'll have to ask to be sure. So it's been a wonderful morning today, and I'd like to thank the leadership of TCN, especially Pastor Poju Oyemade and his lovely wife, Pastor Toyin Oyemade. Thank you so much, and the entire leadership of TCN. Thank you very much. It's a privilege, it's a delight, and it's an honor to be here. So I think so far, all the speakers before me have laid a very good foundation, and especially Dr. Omotowa, when he said the second half advantage, you have to be intentional. So I'm focusing my attention on the second half advantage. Like you said, and from my profile, I put in the 14 years of the first half. So it's the second half that I'm going to talk about more. So now, what if I told you that as we are seated here today, how many people will say that you are considering the possibility that in the next 2 years or in the next 18 months that you will not be doing what you are doing today, that some aspects of life will be completely different from what it is today? Can anybody say so? Okay, I see a few hands up. Okay. Now I want to tell you a story. So there's this lady, a young lady, perfectionist, very good girl, you know, the kind of girl you take home to mommy to marry, family-oriented, very hardworking. She has put in the best. She follows the rules. You know, she's worked up the corporate ladder, you know, and you can't fault her for anything. But one day, she just gets up and she just, you know, I don't want to say ditch, but she just chucks her, just in local, and just chucks that job security and decides to go and be a business person. Meanwhile, this person doesn't have any business training whatsoever. What would you say to that person? Would you think she's crazy? Well, yes, she was crazy. That young lady is me. Maybe you might say not so young, but I was about 40 at the time that I did that. I started my job at 26, and at 40 I thought, what's going on here? So I'm Temilola Adetu, as you've been told, and I've gone through many seasons. So it's safe to say I've had two distinct careers. My corporate life for 14, and then my entrepreneurial journey for 25 plus. How did that happen? What made me do it? It was a defining moment. I was 40. I'm the kind of person that I reflect on, you know, my milestones. And I had a defining moment when I turned 40. And then I stumbled on a business idea. And I thought, why don't I do it? Anyway, I left to start up the back to school business. 25 years later, I handed over last year. And now I'm in my third career. So that's where we are. So I'll tell you how I got there. Months or 6 months before, I say, when I'm 50, when I'm 40, when I'm this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, so I don't let anybody rest. So anyway, I had such reflections. And then I stumbled on this business idea when my eldest son was going to secondary school. So I decided that, maybe I should consider it. But what were the other considerations? So I had that spark. What were the other considerations? The oil industry, as you know, it goes up and down. Oil prices goes up and down, as we're even witnessing now. And so in the 90s, there were a lot of downsizing activities. And I thought, what if they let me go today? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And then I went back to that business idea. Other things, I looked at family, I had a young family. I needed more time for my family, more flexible hours. There was no remote work then. There was no hybrid. So you leave your house in Surulere, no mobile, no laptop, no whatever. So I had to leave. I'm a Surulere girl, like Drupe. I had to leave Surulere and be in VI at 7:30. Anyway, cut the long story short, I looked at all that. I had some health challenges as well at the time. And then it struck me that this is the window of opportunity for me to take advantage of that business idea. You know, that all my friends were in the same age group. Their children were going to secondary school. And then there was this boom of private secondary schools when Loyola, Olashore, Adesoye College, when they all opened. So there was that boom. And I knew that, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do a luxury business. Let me do, since, the sensible part of me said, let me do something that will always be relevant. So that's how I ended up. So what did I do? I did a proof of concept. I had an exhibition, and then I decided that, okay, that's what I'm going to do. But now, I've told you my own reflections. What are your reflections? So let's talk about job insecurity, which was one of my reasons, because a lot of things happen around us and within us. Some things happen around us and it strikes a chord and it makes us think, it makes us go back. So what's your story? What are your reflections? Is it job insecurity? Do you want more flexibility now that there's remote work? Because as an employer, it's difficult to employ when people tell you that they only want to come to work twice a week. So there are market changes that happen when we're in business. There are also career opportunities within your industry and outside your industry. There's the issue of financial stability. Is your business giving you financial stability, or do you want to change to a job? There's the issue of health, not only of yourself, of members of your family, your parents, your spouse, and so on, family circumstances, personal fulfillment. Are you fulfilled? Are you happy? Like the other speakers have said, are you happy doing what you're doing? She worked in NHS for so many years and she thought, oh, my people are wishing there and I'm here. There are so many things. We've seen the different parts, and all of that. Now, purpose. Some of us are late bloomers. I remember back then when you go to church, they say, what's your purpose? And I used to think, what's my purpose? Okay, I'm good at organizing and that's it. But later I found my purpose. When they say you have to be intentional, I found my purpose, which was when I moved. So if you look at all these questions I've asked you, and I want you to consider this, that's why it's on the screen. Please, change is a recurrent theme throughout this. Change in circumstances, change within you, change outside of you. The other thing I want us to look at is mindset. How do we respond to change? We are able to respond to change basically because of the kind of mindsets we have. So permit me to read a couple of things. Mindset is an established set of attitudes, beliefs, or mental habits that shape how an individual perceives or responds to situations. A growth mindset, as we know, is a belief in your system, a belief that your skills, your abilities, whatever it is, they are not fixed. You can adapt to other situations, and that's what I did. So having the courage to pivot to another endeavor at the age of 40 plus, which is what I did, is what can help us in the second half advantage. Like Doctor said, in the football game, that's what can help you. So let's look at it. It is your mindset that makes you responsive to this change. On the other side of the spectrum is the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset tells you that, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm in this job, you know what, let me just stay there for 20, 30 years, I'll retire, I'll be fine. And some of us, that's how we're brought up. Go to university, get a job, and move on. So those are all the things that influence us. But it's important that, it's the answers to our questions, our reflections, that determine how we respond. So how do we respond? Our response is the ability to act quickly and positively. Yes, we look back and say, what have I done? And I don't want us to look at it with regret. The past is gone, let it stay there. Let's move forward. So I've done this, I have this experience. The past is not wasted, even if you've learned some lessons from it. I've done this, I've done that. So what's the next thing? How can I use this knowledge to do something else? Let's look at that and see what we can make of it. So if you've answered a lot of questions, am I fulfilled? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? How long can I do this for? Is it drudgery? Is it, whatever question it is, look at it and be honest with yourself. I'm stressing mindset because Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. Be true to yourself. I want you to answer all this. Be true to yourself and ask yourself, what kind of mindset do I have? Because in Nigeria of today, I can tell you that running a business in an ever-changing environment, you have to be adaptive. You have to be flexible and growth mindset. So just quickly to my story, I'm just going to give you a synopsis of my story, and it's this. After the proof of concept, of course, I had to consult with my husband. He's in the creative industry, and he just thought, are you sure you're going to leave this job security? And knowing me, I said yes, but he decided that, you know what, I'm going to support her. She's crazy. Everybody thought I was crazy. Because guess what? I opened the store at Onikon. I was working in VI, air-conditioned office. I was now at Onikon, dealing with area boys, attempting to prey on my customers. Then there was no help desk to say, oh, hello, my computer is not working. There was no fire drill, no HSC, all those things. I was now in Onikon. The service, I didn't put on generator, engine oil. I was almost running crazy. And guess what was opposite me? Ghana High. How many people know the jollof rice of Ghana High? So here I was from VI, and I set up a shop, a touche shop, opposite a Mama Puts. How? But anyway, was I successful? Yes. There was a lot of customer validation. People were happy and all of that. And fast forward, did I encounter challenges? Yes. It was a seasonal business, and I was scared. I said, what? After 2 months, no customer has come in. What's going on here? But I had to use, with my mindset, I had to tell myself that, no, this is not the end of the road. You just started. There will be, so turn things around. So that's what I did. Of course, what really, really helped me was my corporate discipline. My corporate discipline helped me, stood me in good stead. All the services I could not afford, I outsourced them, audit, accounting, and so on. And then I did not put on my Ajebota hat. I rolled up my sleeves. Idumota today, tomorrow, did what I had to do, and to make sure that I attended to customers personally. I'll stand for hours. I knew the codes of a lot of our products. I'll stand for hours stacking the shelves, putting it, merchandising, displaying, of course. And I was learning along the way. But I just had to do it, because if you don't lay a good example for your staff, they're not going to do it. And I related to customers because I needed to get from them firsthand of what, the feedback, so that we could also improve. So there's no pride in this matter. I was 40 plus, remember, and I had 3 strapping sons, but never mind that. Anyway, fast forward, 12 years down the line, I had built the revenue from 5.7 to 161 million, and I felt, oh, I've arrived, but I was tired. I was overwhelmed. Like Doc said, you can't wake up when you wake up in 2025, it's different from, at 52, I was tired. So I engaged a consultant, he restructured, and he recommended a COO. The COO started, believe it or not, within 2 years that the COO started, our revenue doubled. Guess why? I'd been running the company for 12 years without establishing a revenue target, performance targets. So when he came, he said, what's the target for this year? I said, what do you mean targets? We buy now and we sell. I quickly aligned myself that, that's fine. Oh, yeah, certainly, and then we moved on. So, but you see, like I said, going back to that mindset, if you don't have a growth mindset, you won't be able to accept other people's suggestions or ideas. Yes, was it my vision to start the company? Yes, but you have to let other people come into that vision. You have to let other people expand it and run with it. And expand it, we did. Like I said, he did 2 years, revenue. I hope he's still in this room. He may or may not be. I'll reveal his identity to you later. Anyway, fast forward, we diversified and expanded. And within 5 years of his joining, we're now playing the big leagues, And then I could now wear my Ajebota, and be very, very touche, as they say. And we had increased our revenue by 6.5x from that time. So we've heard about the 5 business divisions, so we diversified. Thank you. So, serving 500, organizations in so many states across Nigeria. Our staff strength grew from 2 in 2000 to 82 in 2019 to 310 last year. So there's a lot of job creation as well. Finally, last year, the COO at that time, he became the DMD about 6 years after that. And last year, he became the CEO. He is none other than Mr. Adetu Oshiemi. Please, if you are here, can you stand up? Is he here? Is he here? Okay, maybe he's not here, but I know that he's a pastor in TCN. Pastor T. Joy, you call him, right? Okay. Anyway, so what made this growth possible? I was open to ideas from my younger team, from the young team I was working with, and then when things changed, we responded by launching our own uniform brand, like you said, Marcel Hughes, which, by the way, is my great-grandfather's name that I kind of turned around a bit. So my strategic mindset became more expansive as I grew older, so that by the age of 59, 60, we actually contemplated and took on private equity investments. So not about age. And anyway, at 65, I'm proud to say I walked the wrong way. I walked the wrong way. And then at 66, the capacity to entertain and have a more expansive mind and analytical mind has become an integral part of me. So my message to you, what's my message to you? My message to you is, it's never too late to start. You know, when I started, 40, and now I was 66, I turned 66 in December, and as our moderator said, I'm still going strong. We're all going strong. Whether you are in a career or whether you are in your business, don't be pigeonholed to a particular role, especially in your career. What helped me also was that I moved around within the company to different departments. So I had experience in treasury, human resources, and planning and insurance. So I had that whole experience and I applied it. You know, it becomes a part of it, especially oil and gas. They drill everything into your head. So be careful to make sure that you develop yourself, you offer yourself, you go the extra mile so that when you are in a career, you can move to other divisions and then you can move across industries. Ask yourself, where do I want to go? How do I get there? What do I have to do? I think all the speakers have said it. They've said what they had to do to get to different places. So that's what we have to do. And if you are in business, please, if that store is not working, if that business is not working, you can actually fold it up, or you can shut down, or you can scale it down, you can go back to the drawing board, you can get consultants in. So it's important that when we do those reflections, please, if you have to make changes within yourself, like your character traits, please do so. When I was working, back then, I was maybe 32 or 31, a consultant came in and they did personality tests and he said, oh, you are not assertive, and if you're not assertive, you'll never be made manager. I said, what? Me? After 2 degrees? Never. So I read all the books. There was no laptop, the internet was just one desktop, we had computer room. I bought all the books on assertiveness and I went overboard. And I made sure that I improved myself and I became assertive. If I didn't become assertive, I wouldn't be able to run a business. So events like we had said, events in our environment, can change us. It can do so many, but please make that change for you. Make that change for your family. Don't do it as any copycat thing. Just make the change you need to make for you and talk to people. Have mentors. There's no point being secretive. It doesn't get you anywhere. Have mentors, people that are in that area that can help you. So when you want to make a change, please let's not jump into it, because A jumped into it, therefore I'm jumping into it. Do the research. Do whatever you need to do, and to make sure that you are doing it, you are sure of what you are doing, and you know your onions. Don't go into any area that you do. And if you know your onions, get an expert that knows it. So, passion is what sustains you. If you are not passionate about what you are doing, I can tell you for free that you soon get tired of it and you just leave it. So, Start small, grow at your own pace. Yorubas say, do not walk, is either work or walk with another man's clock, and that's the truth. Some of us can go into business alone and get other people in. Some people prefer partnerships, some people just lose collaboration, some people freelancing, whatever works for you. Then as a leader, you're supposed to groom and delegate to your team members. When you delegate, please don't empower people and then take the power back. When you empower people, empower them for real, and then support them in that leadership journey. So, I leave with you these few words. Have a growth mindset, be open to possibilities, make decisions that are right for you. It's never too late to start. Well, I'm in my third career now, thanks to my son Damola, our CEO, Mr. Oshiemi, and Mr. Emmanuel Imodi. They put me on my third career. They made me write a book. I'm writing a book. I'm almost done. And I've been interested in mentoring over the years, so I've been on several mentoring platforms, and I want to start doing it as a masterclass later on. And I've always mentored women entrepreneurs, mostly. I serve on advisory boards, and I want to, I think one of our speakers said board membership is sweet. So I will see you about that. So because that's next year at 66. That's the next line. So it's my pleasure to be here today, and I hope I said something to you that struck a chord today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adetu. Please keep the applause going. Thank you. You may have your seat. And to those who are joining online, keep dropping your comments in that chat section. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ma, for that. Did we find that interesting, inspiring, as we did with all our speakers today? Then I think they deserve a rousing applause. Thank you. Quite a number of things have been said today by our speakers, particularly Mrs. Adetu when she spoke, leaving her career or her 9-to-5 at 40. So if you're in the room or you're watching online and you're in your 40s and you're still thinking, she's in her third career, and you're thinking transition, that's why we themed it transition, impact, legacy. You're in the right place. And I'm sure she said something that struck a chord within you and that has provided the clarity required to make the next move. She talked about mindset. Mindset. It's important that we have a growth mindset. I remember you doing some work with some organization years back, and one of the things when we were training the employees we used to do is we have a question that says, what else can you improve on? And some people will say, nothing. And others will say, well, I think I can do X, Y, Z. That's a growth mindset. It shows that we're never at perfection, we're constantly evolving. And Mr. Adetu and our speakers today have shown us that they are still evolving, even after achieving so many incredible feats. Once again, a round of applause. Okay, we still have the panel conversation where we're going to be asking questions. We'll be asking our panelists some really interesting questions, and they will be responding. And of course, we have Mr. Bolanho Joshua to do. But before we get to that point in the event, I will be introducing a co-founder of Africa 40 over 40. If you are just joining us, this is the platform Nigeria, and it's the Africa 40 over 40 edition. That's why you are seeing the kind of speakers that we have here today, who have advanced in their professional careers, but are also doing incredible things as they go along. So the Africa 40 over 40 initiative, the co-founder, I'd like to introduce her. She will come up stage to share a few things about the initiative, and I would encourage us to please be a part of what is going on. There is the 40 Plus Accelerator that Mrs. Ndidi Ukauno had talked about going live today at 1 p.m. Online. So please make sure that you search for that and you also log into what is happening here. It's not enough for us to just attend. Remember, there are still books. Dr. Babs came with some books. Thank you very much, sir. If you're interested in buying, they're available and he will be signing. Of course, I also mentioned that Mrs. Tara Feladurutui, thank you for coming, also came with her books, Building Beyond You, and she's available to sign. Without wasting much time, I will introduce the co-founder of the 40 over 40 initiative, Bode Abifari. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. In addition to being the co-founder of the Africa 40 over 40, Bode is the founder and CEO of Strata, a technology and advisory company driving operational excellence and strategic growth for African enterprises. A seasoned executive with over 23 years of experience in the financial services, fintech, and payments industry. She is recognized for leading large-scale transformations and market expansions across Africa and beyond. As former CEO at Flutterwave, COO, I beg your pardon, at Flutterwave, she architected scalable systems, governance frameworks, and operational models that powered the company's growth to a multi-billion-dollar valuation. We all know Flutterwave, right? Previously, as Associate Director at KPMG, Bode led enterprise transformation and strategy projects for leading financial institutions. She is an award-winning leader and author of The Boys with the Happy Feet Dance, as well as co-host of the Towers, Thorns, and Roses podcast. She brings second-to-none operational insights for corporations and has received numerous accolades, including the Global Top Women in FinTech and KPMG's Projecting the Brand Award, among many others across Africa and beyond. She's celebrated for her visionary leadership and impact. Ladies and gentlemen, to tell us a bit more about the initiative, please join me as I welcome Bode Abifari to the podium.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. First off, I want to say a big thank you to Pastor Poju. Please, everybody help us appreciate Pastor Poju. I know you introduced me as co-founder. Please also help me appreciate the founder, Ndidi Ukauno. Thank you. All right, so my job here is to really talk about 40 over 40 initiative, and as usual, I was on my own about this. Anything that has to do with impact, the future, thinking, always counts me in. So I have a speech, so I'll start with the speech and then I'll go into this. So good afternoon. I want to begin with a simple observation. And you all agree with me that Africa has spent the last 2 decades celebrating potential. So in the market, you hear about young founders, there's fast growth. It matters, right? But if you've worked long enough, you know that the continent is not only sustained by potential. The people who hold institutions together, that's everybody here, I'm assuming everybody is 40 over 40. You know, who have seen economic, political, and organizational cycles, you know when system breaks, and more importantly, what keeps system standing. Most are over 40, agree with me? And most are under-recognized because we have built a narrative that moves too quickly. So I'm very happy to even hear some of the stories from the speakers today. And the truth is that if we remove the layer of the people from any organization, banks, telcos, our public institution, even startups that I've been a part of, things will collapse. But give it time, execution starts to weaken, institutional memory disappears, and you realize that you've been underestimating the most important layer in the system. You appreciate yourself because you are actually the most important layer in the system. This initiative is personal for me because I remember twice in my life, people like, but they like working, but the truth is, twice in my life, I've contemplated being a full-time housewife. The first time was, after I got married, it took us some time to start having children. And I remember telling my partner then that I wanted to resign. And she looked at me, I'm sure she was seeing all the potential. She was like, you don't leave the race, right, in the middle of the race. She just said something like that. She was like, if you want time, because my husband wasn't working in Lagos at that time, we can give you some time and all of that. So she said, take 3 months. You can work from wherever you are. Remote work wasn't anything at that time. And I remember I went to where my husband was. My husband was like, but are you sure about this? 3 months with me. I think by the second week, I was ready I called my partner back because I'll find everything. I'll be like, why is this thing like this? Can we reorganize it? Even my husband was like, Bode, please, when are you going back to work? So that was the first thing. And I think that phase in my life made me stay in the race. And you can imagine everything I had to do at work, I just poured myself into it because the truth is that the children will come. The second time was when I turned 41. I know we've heard a lot of 50, 61. I'm 45. When I turned 41, because I had twins and they're both on the spectrum, so I decided that I'll go to the US and I'll just become their caregiver. And I remember then one of my friends and my mentors, she also reached out to me that, but you have the support system, come back home, right? And you continue to have the support. And I had a leading then that even in the midst of everything I was doing, I wrote a book about that journey. It wasn't even about the journey, it was just about how even when things don't go right, you find the things that go right within that journey and talk about it. And because I wrote that book, I was connected to another mom that helped me to solve something that was very important in the life. So if I hadn't written that book, I wouldn't have been able to get there. At a point as well, after I left the startup, I was going to rest for a whole year. I think 4 months into my rest, one of my mentors also called me. She had just become the CEO of a bank, and she wanted me to come and support her for the first time. She was like, Bode, I know you said you don't want to work, but please come back to work. I'll give you an office that is near your home, but my skills were required. And that was how I got back into the race. I remember before Strata, the name of my company was called Blaze Up. And one of the people that had submitted the proposal to was like, Bode, what is Blaze Up again? It sounds like a place where people come together to smoke. That I should change the name of the company. I wasn't even looking for. It was a very big project. I remember big projects into it. I felt like myself again. So what I'm saying is you're no longer defined by promise, but by responsibility. Things become, so I want to share the 5 things, and I'm speaking to everybody in the room. The first one is you carry more than your title. You are leading teams, but you're also mentoring the next generation of experts, holding families together, raising children, supporting parents, managing realities that don't even appear on your CV. There are some people I've worked with, and there's one lady, she works in the central bank. She did a training, and I'm telling you that for 40 minutes of that training, she was talking from her head. As in, she told me she had spent over 28 years in that, and she was thinking about her retirement. She was like, but what am I going to do? In my mind, I'm like, what are you not going to do? Can you not convert this into an e-course? Everything that is happening in compliance, in startup, in corporations, they want to hear your voice, right? So, there's so much because you have a lot of data. The second point I want you to remember as you think about this phase is also that your decisions carry weight. I remember when I was CEO, you can imagine the amount for a big fintech like that, the amount of money you are moving. In fact, in the car, when I'm with my driver, me and the founder will be using codes because we'll be like, if we mention this money, they will think the money is in my bank account. So some of the things you're doing, your decisions are carrying so much weight, real consequences, jobs, livelihoods. It's no longer theoretical weight. And a lot of the speakers have already said that you now need to say, this weight that I've been carrying, what is it for me, right, in this second phase, and how do I use it? Because all of us have something to start from. The third thing is that you have seen enough to know what not to do. Experience is pattern recognition. I was building Strata, and the good thing is that, people think most of my work I do from home. There was this client, partner, so the client had said I should partner with someone. And the guy was moving funny and everything, and then he was trying to quote, the former body would have been like, okay, let's just do the work. But in this stage, I was like, no. He brought his lawyer, they were quoting. He doesn't know that when you're in payment, I had read, there's no legal thing that I don't know. And I remember in one meeting, he said, according to one contract, he said, according to section. So he looked at me, I said, section. I was like, I know everything that I need to know. So you've seen enough, you know what to do. Some of us, right, we know when there's a list coming, when they will say, you have to leave this position. What are you doing about it? The fourth thing is that you are building for continuity, not applause. So you begin to ask different questions. Will this last? Will this outlive me? When I started my podcast, I remember people were like, so Bode, you can die. Because after a particular time, you're not even looking at people. You're not trying to get approval for people. You're doing what is your own purpose, what is your passion, and you're just trying to codify it and get. So I think as throughout everything that has been said today, and it's perhaps the most importantly is people of starting no. I launched through issues at all. There was one that I was very happy because I was getting a lot of mind. But something asked that, please, what are you people saying next day? Brothers and sisters, I registered for that certification. Saturday, Sunday, I didn't have a life, but I came out of that and, I showed them, they were like, I got the project. They said they needed somebody that was white, that had experience in America. At this stage, you have network. I called one of my friends and we had worked together. I was like, we have a project to do. He was like, Bode, anything. And he came, we showed up. And that is what exactly it is all about. So the reality of this phase, of this life, being really spotlighted is under leveraging the most valuable assets. Everybody in this room, all experts. That is the 40/46 to address. 40, this initiative is a curated, evidence-based continental list. So each year, we identify individuals across Africa whose most meaningful impact began after the age of 40. It was because people see possible, just as we've seen today, and you can know what to do to your different sectors and to your different work. So in terms of the focus is on the kind of impact that shows up in enterprises, jobs created, institutions strengthened, and systems sustained, both profits and non-profits, visible and verifiable impact. In terms of the structure, credibility is everything. So we'll start with nomination from individuals, institutions, networks, and credible sources. Independent research and verification, we check, we validate, we do the work. Then editorial listing. There's a lot of knowledge we're going to be passing. We're going to, speak to some of the people that you've spoken to. We're going to find and really drill down on the how so that you can also learn from there. We have a spectacular board of trustees. So the board of trustees will also be sharing that with you today. If Africa 40 over 40 is going to become a continental benchmark, it will be because the integrity of the people behind it, and that is what we are offering. So I'll just ask Ndidi to join me on stage. So today marks the formal opening of this initiative. Nominations will begin shortly. Research and verification will follow. Africa does not lack talent. How many of you agree with me? We don't. It's only under deploys experience, and it has consequences. So that's why we're looking into this. So Africa 4040 is a reset and a signal that impact does not peak at 30. It often begins at 40. Do you agree? And you must agree, because everybody here, even as I'm seeing you, I can see impact on top of your heads. Please clap for yourselves again. So today, we formally count down to declaring Africa 4040 open as we begin the work of identifying the people who are quietly building the future of this continent, and we are glad to do this with you in the room. Are you ready? Eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Open. Thank you. Woo! I expect a louder round of applause. If we've said something in this room, we've said you are so relevant to the now and the future that is Africa. We're not going to leave just celebrating the fact that the nominations have been opened. We want you to start to look out for people across Africa who are, look at our panel today. People who are doing great work. And we hope that as we spotlight them and we tell their stories across Africa, that other people will be energized by what they have done and start to do great things. Africa must solve for Africa. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Keep clapping, please, ladies and gentlemen. How many of us are excited about the initiative? Is it relevant? Is it timely? Yes, absolutely. Very, very timely. Once again, a round of applause for the Africa 40 over 40. Thank you to Mrs. Okanu. Thank you very much for putting this together. Thank you to Mrs. Bode also for putting this together, and the entire team that work and continue to support them. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. This still is the platform NG. All right, I'm going to be going through a few highlights from some of the things our speakers have shared before we proceed to our panel conversation. But ladies and gentlemen, have we been inspired? Was this worth your time so far? I can't hear anybody responding. Maybe we need to turn the volume of the mic up. Can you hear me? Has this been worth your time so far? Has this been an incredible way to spend your Workers' Day holiday? Yes? Okay. All right. Awesome. So the hashtag remains the platform second half. So please keep sharing across different platforms. We are not done yet. We're going to be asking questions and getting answers from our various speakers today. I'm sure that there's quite a number of other things that we're curious about. Mr. Bolao Joshua is going to be steering the conversation, as he always does, very, very brilliantly and eloquently. So what have we learned today? I don't know about you, but I have my notes full of a lot of lessons that have come from our speakers this morning into the afternoon. Because I believe in Nigeria, Lagos time, we are now in the afternoon. So, some highlights from our speakers. Change is constant. Change is constant. We had one of our speakers mention that the mindset is key. We have to be adaptable. We have to be humble enough to recognize when we don't understand something, when we don't know something, and we have to be humble enough as well to step out of the way and allow others who are more competent step in and do the work. We also learned that continuous learning and development is key if we're going to remain relevant as entrepreneurs or career professionals, whether in our 40s or in our 50s or our 60s. We also learned that building support networks is important for us. Our circles, what circles are we building? What rooms are we being represented in today so that we don't wait till our latter years and start regretting that we haven't built the right networks. So network, people, very important. We also heard that teams, having the right teams. I remember some time ago listening to employers, I beg your pardon, lament how difficult or challenging it can be to get the right talent. But ladies and gentlemen, we've listened to all our speakers today who are running thriving and successful businesses. So where are they finding the talent? Where? I don't think anybody here exports or imports talent. Does anybody import? They're all Nigerians. Dr. Babs, all Nigerians. Mrs. Adetu, all Nigerians. Professor Elebute, all Nigerians. Mr. Ugodre, all Nigerians. All Nigerians working tirelessly, exceptionally well. So are you the worker? Can you turn to your neighbor and ask them, are you the worker that somebody can employ and goes to sleep? Yeah. Are you the type of worker that someone could employ and go to sleep? Don't worry about the response. Very instructive when Mrs. Adetu was sharing and talking about succession and how she handed over at that time. And now she's taking other roles and going to pursue other things. Dr. Ete also talked about that and dedicated team. And then, of course, we heard from Dr. Babs as well, talking about his team and the people that have come together to build NUTM. And Mr. Obichukwu also talked about the team and the work that they're doing. So we've had very, very instructive lessons from the platform Nigeria today. And I believe that the speakers have given us calls to action, ladies and gentlemen. So please, before we go into the panel, I'd like you to just turn to the person next to you. And I remember I attended a service sometime in some place I won't mention. And after the service, the preacher said, can you ask the person next to you, what's the single takeaway, one takeaway from that service? And I found it very profound. So please just ask the person next to you, what are you taking away from today? Perhaps you might be able to learn one or two things. And this is going back to network, build networks. You never know who's next to you. So please ask them and please share just a single takeaway, single thing that you're taking away. And if you're joining us online, please do the same. All right. Welcome back to the platform Nigeria, and we are proceeding now to the panel conversation. Happy Workers' Day once again, ladies and gentlemen. And after this time, I probably will return much later to thank everyone for coming, but I will at this point introduce our moderator who is going to be speaking, asking questions to our speakers today. Ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome, please join me in welcoming Mr. Bolao Joshua, who is going to be our moderator for the panel conversation. And our applause can be better than that, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So he said we should ask the person next to us, what are you taking away? And I said, after listening to all these people, I just realized I'm still very young. So I'll be calling up all our speakers. Mr. Ugodre, please can you come up? Dr. Elebuti Odunsi, Mr. Babs Omotawa, Mrs. Adetu, have I left anyone now? Oh, free sitting. Okay. Have a seat, man. Okay. Thank you for your very insightful presentations. I'll start with the first question. As you were all speaking, some people spoke about first half. Some people spoke about second half. Some people have even played extra time. And so the question is, some people are even asking, how do you know when the first half has ended? Because some people even feel that as they are now, they are just about to come into the first half. They're not even sure the first half has ended. So when people are saying 40 this, the question is, how do you know when the first half has ended? And Didi, I'll give that to you.
Thank you very much, Bolao. When I get asked this question, I think people are often looking for a chronological age. But from a practical point of view, I think when you start asking yourself those questions, I think it was Professor Elebuti Odusi that talked about that mingling feeling. Once you start feeling that, what did I do with my life? What am I going to do next? You are on the border. You are about to cross into the second half. So I'm finding that it's different times for different people. On the average, it's when people are in their 40s, but I'm finding that some people are coming into midlife crisis quite early. You hear people who are 35, 37, 38 saying, what did I do with my life? And I'm like, what are you talking about? But it is their reality. So for me, that will be the marker.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Babs Omotawa, because you had a very distinguished private sector career, and you said you started preparing for the second half, 15 years before you retired. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I want you to give us what were those signals you saw that started preparing you for the second half, that you knew, you know what, this first half is ending?
I will say in my own case, it was probably two things. One, I think was a self-reflection, very close to what Ndidi said. And two, was a mentor. I think the role of mentor in our life is also very, very important. I was very fortunate that whilst in the UK, I had a mentor who, by the way, we didn't start off very well with each other. I thought he was a bad person, but he turned out to be a wonderful coach and mentor. And he started me off on this thing about, let's talk about what you like to do in life. Where do you want to be in life? And at the time he said it, I said, something like I wanted to be a manager or a director, something like that. And he asked me why. And by the time he asked me 5 why, I didn't know why exactly I wanted to do those. So it took me on a journey of over 3 months, asking me, what do you want to do in life? What will give you joy in life? What gives you motivation? What gives you satisfaction? And the more he asked that question, the more I then thought deeply and got back into, I wanted to be a teacher. It was a very surreal experience because he was with a bright career in oil and gas, and I had come to the conclusion I wanted to be a teacher. But the ability to start asking yourself that question, what do you want to be in life? What makes you happy? Many of us work in organizations, we're not really happy. We're just there for our salaries, for career. But when you start thinking what really gives you joy, and only you will know that. I can't know what will give you joy. My answer will be different from your answer. So I think that was it. And I think the second thing was, I think as Ndidi said, you also get to a point in your career, you start thinking, what's life? Life is not only about yourself. And when you spend so much time only building a career on yourself, you start to think, what else can I do? How else can I have impact beyond myself? And that was the time I started thinking, I need to work on this. And finally, it's very important you do it early, because as I said, when you determine what you want to do, you might need to then start preparing. In my own case, I wanted to be a teacher. Oil and gas isn't a natural place to prepare to be a teacher. So I knew you better go back to school and get a PhD so you can be a teacher. But my coach then shared something with me. He said, even in this work, as an oil and gas person, there are a lot of opportunities to learn how to be a better teacher. It's about mentorship, it's about coaching. Spend more of your time there than spending it on other things.
Thank you. So, can we give him a round of applause, please? Mr. Ogodre, you seem to have taken another path to this second half, and I call it the side hustle generation. You were in entrepreneurship, and then you also had a thriving side gig. So it looks like you were playing two halves at once. So you've transitioned seamlessly, but just tell us how you have played it, being an entrepreneur, finding a second calling, managing both, and then transitioning successfully.
All right, thank you very much, and a pleasure being on this panel. To your very, very first question, I think one of the answers would also be, it depends on what game you're playing. Football is a game of two halves. Basketball is a game of 4 quarters. So you can decide where you belong. So in my own case, I think it was more of a game of 4 quarters. I was an employee, and I really loved the job that I was doing. I was a chartered accountant. I was into corporate finance. I was doing a lot of stuff. And I was in sectors that were very challenging for me. But at the same time, I also had my own passions. I had things that I really liked. That was a little bit different very much different from the career that I had at the time. So I wanted to go into media, and my love for media started when I, started investing in the stock market in, 2005, 6, 7. And at that time, I, just like everybody else, wanted to be like Warren Buffett. So I was, investing. Warren Buffett will tell you when you invest for the long time, hold it forever. And so we bought a lot of all those stocks thinking that we'll hold them for forever. Yes, and then we realized that, what applies in America does not apply in Nigeria. And so I realized all those, websites I used to read in America, they don't understand the Nigerian market, and it was not for here. And so that's when this started. But I loved my job as well. And so I knew that there was going to be sacrifices. And I did not want my employers to one day just question my job, because I knew what I was doing was, in a way, going to put me in the spotlight. But I always wanted to be the first to be at work and the last to leave. This is my regular 9-to-5 job, and I did it for years. And at some point, when I was running Nairametrics, a lot of people didn't know that I had a 9-to-5 job that I took seriously. And so I think for anyone here who's looking at a side hustle or pivoting to a side, I think you got to first of all understand that there's a lot of sacrifices to be made. For example, early on, because I knew that 9 to 5 belongs to somebody else, right, who pays me. 5 to whenever then belonged to me. I had a driver earlier on, I was paying a driver for my salary because I knew I had to be walking on my way home. So immediately I close, I start to work. So there's a lot of sacrifices, no time for family as well, because I was always, doing work. And so that's what it takes. Make sure you look for something that you're passionate about, something that you're serious about, and never for one day think that your side hustle is more important than your job. Because at the end of the day, the person that is paying your bill is the most important person to you. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to start by being an intrapreneur. If you do not have that in you, then you would always suffer as an entrepreneur. So I think that is sort of like how to pivot it. It's difficult, but I think without sacrifice, you always look back and say to yourself, yes, I'm doing well.
Thank you. Where you spoke about discipline, being the first to get to work, getting early to work, because these days we even see instances where people are late to a virtual meeting, and then when you ask them why they are late, they've forgotten. They'll say it's traffic, and you're like, is there traffic on Zoom? Anyway, so next question is for you, Mrs. Adetu. When you were speaking, you spoke about the schools were starting, and then you now went into the school kitting business. And it reminded me of Uber and Google Maps. The reason Uber exists is because there's Google Maps. If there was no Google Maps, there would be no Uber, because how are the cars going to get there? So you've been a perfect example of an opportunity created itself in one sector. You can build a school, but you could build a business that supports the school. Can you just speak us through it about that mindset of lemons coming to people, they make lemonade, or making the best of every situation?
Okay, my own situation was, I was shopping for my first son going to secondary school. And I went over, I was doing a 9 to 5, or rather 7:30 to whatever, and with young children. And I had to spare 3 or 4 Saturdays going around. And then my friends told me, oh, go here, go there. I went to all the markets and I said, hey, why is there no shop, just one store that sells everything? And it now took me back to when I was doing my A-levels. The school I was in England, they just said, oh, go to John Lewis's, go to the 5th floor or 4th floor, just mention the name of your school, they will kit you with everything. And then we went downstairs and bought every other thing that I needed in school. So I thought to myself, flashback. I said, why is there no such a shop in Nigeria? I thought of it, and then of course, like I said, there was downsizing. It was a mixture of a lot of factors. There was downsizing oil and gas. After 3 or 4 years, everything will be stable, then there will be another one. So it was like waves that were coming. And I said to myself, okay, so if this wave hits me, what do you do? And I'm very restless. If I do something, I do it fully. So I looked at it, and then I thought, okay, all your friends have children in school. The new schools had come up, and there were more coming up. So I was unsettled in my spirit that if you don't take advantage of this thing now, is it at 55 when you are tired? Is that when you want to start putting a store together? No. You are young enough now. And that's why I did that proof of concept. Okay, let me just test this idea. So I took my vacation, took my vacation allowance as well, went to Dubai, I put together a list. I went to Dubai, bought everything on the school list. Then I rented a hall in VI, and then I used the PTA directory of all the schools that my children and my friends' children attended, and I sent them EMS post at that time. And they came, and they all bought. So I just thought, oh wow, so that means there is a need. So the need was established. The schools, were there, and more schools were coming up. And it was a case of, if you lose momentum now, you've lost it. And I didn't set out to be a business person at all. In fact, a lot of people who know me just say, Tebula, you're doing business, how? But I just thought, my thinking was at 55, when you are leaving, then the retirement age was 55, when you are leaving, what do you want to do? What will you be useful for? I was not ready to till that time to realize that, I was not useful for anything after being in oil and gas. Oil and gas, they pamper you, they give you everything. I'm sure you can, they'll give you everything, so you will not know. And then I had seen some of my older colleagues, I'd seen what happened to them. They were disillusioned, they didn't know what to do. So I thought, you're 40, you know what? You can still learn new skills, you can still move forward. Just get up, take advantage of this and move. If you don't move, that's it. You just be there. So it was that fear of, I guess, stagnancy on the one side, and the urge to want to do something different and to be in control of my time as well, because I could see that my children were young, I was leaving home too early, and then sometimes I was on some task forces, they would have to put us up in a hotel. Some public holidays, they would just send the driver for you at 6 a.m. or 6:30, and I just thought, you know what, I need to do something better. So it was a combination of things. Of course, when I was doing it prayerfully and all of that, but after I started, sometimes I ask myself, was I in my correct mental state? But I guess I was, and I still am.
Interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot to learn. You spoke about coming from the oil and gas space where they pamper you, and then you set up an office, Makati Street, Onikoran area. I mean, at a point in time, I used to work in that area, and I used to park in a particular car park. And when I park, I'll see these area boys, and then I'll give them some money. And they spent all the time smoking hemp. And then one day, one of them came to meet me on a Friday, and I'll say it in Yoruba because it's easier to understand. And he said, Sheko Shento ti sheyin ni. And then thinking that you, from an oil and gas background, went to work with those people. So I'm just encouraging anyone here to say, look, there's nothing you cannot overcome. Thank you. Mr. Liberty to say, Doctor, the next question is for you. Coming from your background, your two parents are professors, and then you decided to come back. And your family hospital, I think at that point in time, also does something similar to what you came to set up. Maybe not as extensive, but just giving your family pedigree, how did you manage the pressure of the fact that when you even came back, you didn't even go to the family hospital? You went to set up your own. I mean, how did your parents, how did you manage it?
So I think that this is alignment in your life. When you start to think about it, and when you start to research it, and I believe strongly that you already answer is you answering that call. Coming back to Nigeria was never about coming back to run the Lagoon hospitals. I'm not an administrator. For me, what gets me out of bed every day is the patient in the bed and providing excellent standards of healthcare to my patient. Thank you. And the only way that I could do that and continue to get out of bed every morning, I'm going to June, do what I'm trained. I'm an obstetric. In fact, when I left school, I knew the 4 or 5 the listen. To thy own self be true, right? To obstetrics and gynecology, I'm not that empathetic about women having babies. I think, I have 5 of my own, it's okay, that kind of thing. And so on. So I think, but I do believe that those seeds are put into your mind for a reason. And I say that because, Timilola, you were saying that they thought you were crazy. You can't even imagine, even the people I was working with in the UK just could not understand. When we moved back to Lagos, we didn't have a home in Lagos. It's not that we were established in Nigeria, and we moved, right? But I do believe God, I mean, for me, it's God, okay? Because, for example, I'll just give you one quick story. I remember going to, at one point, before I could even really discuss this properly with my husband, whose job in finance was not even facing Africa. So it was, one of us was planned. I went to this dinner party, my husband wasn't there, and this man's wife wasn't there, so we ended up sitting together. And then he said, oh, what do you do? And I'm sure it's the same for any entrepreneur. They make the mistake of asking you what you do, you're consumed by it. I'm sure you start saying about what you want to do, you're already doing your research, so I'm going on and on, I want to go back to this healthcare. And this poor man sat there very nicely, very patiently, the kind of person I want to be, because I don't really listen, and just listen to me go on and on about, you know. And when he was leaving, he gave me his business card and said, call me on Monday. But don't tell me my secretary I met you at a party and gave you my card at 1 a.m. in the morning, because my wife will hear about it. I look at this man's card, true story. He's the head of global health for KPMG. He wasn't an artist, he wasn't an engineer, he wasn't in oil and gas, he wasn't a teacher. He was the head of global health for KPMG. KPMG UK helped us put together the strategy for coming to set up Marcel Ruth and worked with us for 6 months and did not charge us one single penny, because he listened to me for 15, 20 minutes, and he probably thought I was mad, but he thought, well, she's going. She's not saying she might go. She was going. Introduced us to all sorts of people that gave us the advice that actually then developed what Marcel Ruth became. So if that's not God in the story, there was nothing about that about going to run Lagoon or anything else or whatever else it was. It was not about that. I ran 2 private practices that were my practices anyway. So I think that's what it is. I do want to say something quickly, though, to the people in the room who are wondering whether this is age-related. I don't really think so. But for people who ask me the question, and because with women in healthcare, we're mentoring a lot of people, I do say, though, that you can't risk it all. So you can't make a major move when you can't afford to pay your children's school fees, for example. There's some things that, you just need to be a bit careful about, and maybe you still, because even from the wanting to do this and the doing it, there was a 6-7 year program. None of this is about just getting up and throwing it all away and so on and so forth. We made sure that in that time, we could pay the children's school fees in FX, even if we came to Nigeria and the Naira didn't do it and so on. So there's that. But I do also think, and the reason because what you just said triggered it, I don't believe that you could be successful even in your life's dream and entrepreneurship if you don't already walk that walk when you're working for other people. So that being the first person in the door and the last person out, even when you're doing it for other people, is what's going to allow you to do it for yourself. You can't work for, and I do, like we're interviewing last week, and not, sorry, the people, can I just ask you, is this job hybrid? No, do you understand what I'm trying to say, right? You're already coming to be there, and you want to work for somebody who's going to pay you. When you work for yourself, do you think you're going to earn that discipline, that resilience that you need? Not every day. You're sitting, all of us sitting here, it's all great, university, hospital, and so on. There were days when hospital wasn't going to happen, even in the middle of the project, when the money ran out, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you said you referred to it already. You can never fulfill that dream if even whilst you're working. So happy Workers' Day, all of you. Happy Workers' Day. But be the worker you want to be when God gives you the opportunity to do what you would really love to do whilst you're working for other people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I like the bit where you spoke about you met this man and you spoke to him about your dream. You know, I think it's just very important for all of us. When you meet this man, what do you speak to him about? This country. This country. You pour out your lamentations. And the man himself looks at you and says, this is somebody to avoid. Because there's nothing to hope about you. Even the person is telling himself, I should not speak to this person again. So please, when the opportunity comes, let us always speak positively. But to speak positively, you must have had positive thoughts and plans. Mr. Montoya, the next question is for you. Both you and Dr. Elebute have spoken about what I call intrinsic satisfaction. You know, you both spoke about, she said, I needed to do this for my people. You spoke about, I needed to do this because I realized there was no quality education in Nigeria. And when you spoke about the things that made you happy, you were speaking about the achievements of the students and all that. Now, a lot of people are so engrossed in their own personal needs, even when the needs have been surpassed, that they are not able to chase a purpose. Can you just speak to chasing a purpose and getting personal fulfillment?
Thank you very much. And I think it's a very interesting question because in life, your fulfillment cannot be about yourself. If all you came to this world to do is just to acquire wealth and just think about yourself, I think you have limited God's plan in your life. Because God has created all of us to be able to make positive impact on this planet. And so, you know, as an individual, you have to get to a point in your life that it cannot just be about you. And it's not because you won't have needs, and I think she talked well about it. You have needs, of course, especially you have children, you have to pay their school fees and all of that. So there's a phase in your life you have to make sure you are able to at least protect that, those close to you. But beyond that, it comes to what I call, are you content in life? You know, this is always a question I always say to people, are you content in life? Do you have contentment? Because if you don't have contentment in life, you'll always be seeking for more and more and more. And it's about the propensity to spend, which means the higher you go, the higher you want more. Today you are driving a Honda car, next tomorrow you want to drive a Lexus. You move from there, you want to fly a plane, private jets, you can't enter commercial jets anymore. On and on, you can keep acquiring and acquiring and acquiring. But I tell you, you get no satisfaction from it. You're not going to sleep on more than one bed. In fact, I say to my wife sometimes, you only sleep on one side of the bed if you're not careful. You can't be rolling on the bed throughout the night, you know? So there's a limit to that. And I find that satisfaction for me comes from just seeing others thrive. And I've been to at least over 150 countries in the world. One of the things I have never seen in any of those countries is the quality of talents in Nigeria. It's hugely a big resource that we haven't harnessed at all. We have focused a lot on our natural resources and all of that. But every time you see a Nigerian given the right quality of education and given a competitive environment, you just see them thrive. Whether you go to the US, you go to the UK, you know, NHS, wherever you go to NASA, go to any part of the world, you find Nigerians there. And so for me, because of even that huge talent, anything I can do to help equip that talent to thrive, for me is just so joyful. When I see our students graduate and go on to do great things, it gives me so much joy. And I think you made a good example just now around You know, are you a complainer in this country, or are you one thinking of solutions? And I always say, every time you are complaining, know that you have stopped leading. Kick yourself in the foot, because that thing you are complaining about is actually an opportunity. And that's one of the things we teach our students in our university, that you have to find problems in the country and solve them. Let me just give one example on that. So there was this period, I think it was in 2022, the Naira was being devalued very badly against the dollar. People were complaining, oh, my money is not retaining value. And our students picked up this, 4 of them came together, they said, you know, this is an opportunity. Everybody is complaining about Naira losing value to the dollar, and they want their Naira to still, you know, be well valued. And they got into a solution where they partnered with a microfinance bank in the US and were able to save people's money in Naira at the dollar equivalent. So let's say you save your Naira today, let's say 600 Naira equals to $1. If you come back in a year's time, you want to collect your money, whatever $1 is worth at that point in time, plus the interest you would have gained. By last year, they told me that they had revenue over $10 million. 25, 26-year-old students.
Wow.
What was a problem in the country was actually a huge opportunity. So I encourage everybody, every time you think of a problem, the wealthiest people in the world, they are only wealthy because they solve a problem. So don't complain. See that as an opportunity to become impactful.
Thank you. He said the wealthiest people in the world is because they solved a problem. And so I'll go to you, Ugodre. In 1977, a Nigerian called Otumba Shibomi Balogun started the first private bank in Nigeria, FCMB. He was 43. In 2010, the central bank came up with a policy limiting the tenure of bank executives. There was a CEO called Mr. Tony Elumelu. He had to leave UBA then, and then he's gone up to do Transcorp, bigger things. When people face challenges these days, the first thing we hear is mental health. Now, can you speak to this mental health? Because we've seen, and I'm just giving examples of people who were at the top of their career and pivoted into something else. But now you see people, and you see a discussion, a WhatsApp group, and what they're discussing only is mental health. Given the fact that you've been an entrepreneur and you were also running a side gig and you are here, you didn't have mental health. Can you speak to this mental health?
I feel like I'm being set up, and I hope that my wife is not watching. Because we always have this running battle about mental health, and mental health is real. First of all, I think there are people who go through mental health, and I think they're giving as much support as possible. You also learn that not everybody has the bandwidth to deal with different challenges, but I think internally we all have something. God gives every single person some inner strength, right? I think it's just being able to figure out what that thing is. And so for me, I went through different periods of, challenges that I guess would have been mental health for a lot of people. But I think it was later when I read, forgot the name of that book, where she talked about growth mindset. I think you mentioned growth mindset. So there's a book about, having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So it was when I read that book that I realized, so that's what I was then. And the point is, if you're somebody who, whenever you see a problem, it excites you, you want to solve it, you start to figure out how to fix it. Like I tell my wife, I say, look, every day what I do is fix things. solve problems. That's what I do for people, whether it's because I'm trying to analyze one financial statement of one bank so that my readers can understand it easily, or trying to figure out what stock to buy or not, or trying to figure out where to buy diesel for my office so that whatever it is, you're solving problems every day. The recent one I solved 2 days ago was my 14-year-old daughter disturbing me and telling me she wants to start investing in stocks. I'm like, what are you doing with stocks? You're still in SS1. Like, she wants to learn how to invest in stocks. So you're solving problems every day, different problems, health problems, problems of staff stealing from you. Problems don't end. It never ends. I mentioned Aliko Dangote, right? 2 years ago, he was solving problems, wasn't it? He was fighting the so-called cabal. So your president today is also fighting too. So problems exist everywhere. So I think for me, I realized that, you know what? There is something that I always tell myself. I always say, whenever I'm in a corner and things are tough, something I always tell myself, it could have been worse. Once I just tell myself, it could have been worse, I move on. Because immediately I realize that there's somebody in a worse position than I am at the moment. So what's that person doing? So why are you trying to bog yourself down? Fix it and move on. So I think so long as you're able to continue to do it, and of course, also, you know, I always say, understand what lane you're in. You're not running anybody's race. I think a lot of the problems that people also have, even entrepreneurs, is to start to envy people and think you're competing with somebody else. And you're just running your own race. Stay in your own lane, keep building. Success will come to you in ways that you can't even imagine. You just see, all of a sudden, you're just in the limelight because you're just building quietly. But it is when you start to, think that you're running somebody else's race or you're on the same lane with someone that you start to cave under pressure, and then mental health sometimes starts to happen. So I think for me, those, were the kind of things I do. So to myself, I tell myself every day, it could have been worse. You're running your own race. You are on a mission. And like I said earlier, my mission is to create wealth through information. So that's my mission. And that guides me every day. And that's why I never get pressured. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we should be sending people to you for counseling. Okay, next question is for you, Didi. Nothing is small until you compare it to something else. It's only when you compare something to something else that something starts looking small. Now, a lot of people who are 40, and you were showing a picture of your grandma on the screen. Our parents, most of them, they didn't know the difference between the first half and the second half. They just walked, and by the time they just ended, some of them were in extra time. Some of them were substituted. They just kept on walking. Now, for people here who are over 40, if you had to tell them about if you were going to recreate your career, and I know you've written books, what will be the top 2 advices you will give them for people who are above 40?
First of all, it is the realization early that retirement is a choice, right? And then secondly, I discovered, or I've come to embrace the fact that self-discovery continues in the second half. So you need to start to, Dr. Babs talked about it, that he started early. You need to start to probe and mine yourself on the inside. I often talk about, there's something we do when I do the Power of Work boot camps. We do something called revolution mapping. And for people there are a few people here who have attended the boot camps, you can hear Dr. Babs talk about how his mentor said to him, or his coach said to him, that even if you want to be a teacher, there's a way to practice it in this place. So even after you have mined on the inside, what am I passionate about? What would I like to go on to? Start to execute where you are. Work is honestly a platform, and it presents to you the opportunity to begin that execution. Even if you want to, you love to bake cake, you're currently a banker, start baking the different kinds of cakes. Use your colleagues as a guinea pig and let them start to give you feedback. Before you know it, you are making their children's cakes. Before you know it, you know what? You understand it's time to leave the job and chase your passion. So 2 things for me: know that it's not too late, and then know that retirement is not the end, right? And then the second thing for me is self-discovery. Start early, find it, and start to test it while you're in that space.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Adetu, the next question is for you. You know, you've had an extremely fascinating journey, and you ended by saying you are modeling at 66. You know, and the mom of the richest man in the world is also modeling. So, curiosity and also encouraging other people, you know. How did you get into modeling at 66? I know you've spoken something about your son, but, you know, just the enthusiasm, how did you get into it at 66?
Okay, well, what happened was, like I said, I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, especially women. So I had this mentee that I met when I was on a panel, you know, and she emerged as one of the winners. So after the session, I went up to her and said, oh, I'd like to be your mentor, because I saw that, you know, she probably needed more structure. She's in fashion. And so we had a couple of sessions, a few sessions. Then one day she reaches out to me to say, would you mind modeling for me? Because I want to showcase my line, and I want people to know that it's people of your age can wear a design. So actually, I didn't give much thought to it, and I said yes. Long and short, I said yes, and then she said, at Lagos Fashion Week. I said, really? Okay. I let that sink in. But you see, by nature, I'm restless, I'm adventurous. Sometimes I just want to do something fun. I just do things, you know. So I thought, oh, good idea, not a problem at all. And that's how it started. And so then I also have a son. In fact, my 3 sons encouraged me. Everybody around me encouraged me. In fact, one of my last son, Adetu, he's here now. He even taught me, he said, let me do the video. He taught me how to do the walk and everything. At a point, he said, just put your head up, just walk as if you are better than everybody else there. So I said, okay. And then I have a son who is Delola. He's a fashion blogger and stylist as well. So I told him about it. He wanted to see the outfits. He said, oh, that's fine. Okay, send me the videos. Yes, this is how you do it. This is how you do that. And I actually had fun doing it. But that's when I realized that there's nothing as good as experiencing a particular role. It's grueling work. Those who model is a lot of work. We first had to do a photo shoot. We're there from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Change. Different, just to get the photo. They say, oh, we do the photo shoot before the event. Then the day before the event, we went for rehearsal. Then the day of the event but it was fun. I enjoyed it. And you see, for me, at the end of the day, a lot of people said to me, a lot of younger ladies said to me, you've encouraged us to know that we can do whatever we set our minds to do. I didn't care, and I didn't tell any of my close friends. I didn't care that my age group, my generation would say, some people call me Temilu, what's wrong with Temilu? I didn't care. I just didn't care. I just said, I feel like doing it, I want to do it, I'm helping out my mentee here, and that's fine.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of lessons, you know. One is, when she told you about it, you know, I know some people will look at that mentee and say, oh, no respect. You have no respect. You looked at me, and this is what you are saying. So I think it also speaks to the open, just be open, mind there. Thank you. So we have a few questions from the audience. Just take a few of them and return back. And the first question is, what practical steps and strategies can individuals in various stages of their careers and life transitions take to effectively navigate their professional development and create fulfilling paths, despite challenges such as low achievements, career changes, and balancing multiple interests? Mr. Babs, you want to help us with that?
So it's an interesting question, and there's no one answer to that. But what I will say is, if I think of myself, one of the things I did very early on in my career is to have what I call an A to B. An A is typically where you are, and B can be where you are going to in that organization. I'm not talking of stage 2 yet. And in that, you will have to think about what are the skills required for where you want to get to, and start to look at how do you develop those skills by yourself. And you look at also, I think the question also talks about if you have challenges at work, how do you navigate that? In my experience, and when I joined Shell initially, we were probably about 60 that joined Shell. And I rose through to become managing director, probably the only one in the group. And people sometimes ask me, how did you achieve that? And I said, one of the things I did that I thought was different was that I didn't know how to complain. Right from the very start, while I was working in the warehouse, I think it was said earlier, the first problem was a lot of my colleagues who are graduates were complaining, why am I in the warehouse? I'm a graduate, why am I working in the warehouse? And that complaint reflected in their work, and it makes you not perform as much as you can. I just focus on my work. I'm here, whatever I'm doing, I'm being well paid. I don't have to think about whether it's working in a big place or a small place. And that positive attitude to work always works well. And if you do the opposite, which is you go into I am not happy here, it goes into your performance, you are put down, you are unhappy because you are put down, you start working negatively, you just go into a spiral. So, the two things I would say is, one, do a plan of your A to B, know where you are, know your challenges, get feedback. A lot of us don't know ourselves well. We think we are superstars, we think we are the best in after sliced bread. And I remembered, once in my career, I was like that. I thought I was the best in after sliced bread. We did an evaluation, a psychometric test, and I saw red everywhere. I suddenly realized I'm not the best in after sliced. We all have weaknesses, no matter how good you are, and you have to work on it. If you do, and you remain very positive at work and contribute positively, always looking for solutions, there will be problems everywhere. And I always say that the best place to be in the world, most of you will not agree with me, the best place to be in the world is Nigeria. It's the best place in the world to be because of all the problems we have. Those are all opportunities. Sometimes we are here, we see a lot of Chinese people, Indian, Lebanese, they come in here, they're making lots of money because they are solving problems. And if we all just can focus on that, to look at every opportunity. I was coming with my wife this morning and I was saying, there are so many things that are opportunities. And I used a small example with her. I said, in the UK, we used to have this card. It's a scratch card. If you use it on your phone, you actually can speak for twice the amount of time you are speaking. I said, what a wonderful opportunity. I hope somebody in the room will take it and run with it. That's a huge opportunity. It's not being done in the country. We like making phone calls a lot in Nigeria. And if somebody can come and say, instead of your 10, give you 20 minutes, your 10 naira can give you 40 minutes, a lot of people will buy it. So huge opportunity. I would just say to the person, look at yourself, make the plan, and make sure you are very positive about work, even when you face.
Thank you. Now, this next question, I don't know who will take it, but somebody has to take it. The person said, in this conversation today, most of you spoke to people who have spent time gathering skills in top firms and private sector. However, can I ask for people who have spent 15 to 20 years in the civil service or public service? How do you transition out of this redundant situation without waiting for retirement? Do you go back to school or begin to amass certifications, especially if you want to pivot to another trajectory entirely? I ask this looking for shortcuts, as it seems like we have a higher battle to fight as compared to colleagues in the private sector in terms of transferable skills. What will you advise, please?
I think I kind of spoke to this when I started. If I recall, I used an example of my mother. My mother worked in the civil service, and I mean, she. Okay, I think it's back. Yeah, so, and this was, again, she had to go back to acquire a degree that she felt would be relevant for her retirement. So she acquired a degree in accountancy because she wanted to be a tax consultant when she retired. Now, this was 20, 30 years ago. Today, she doesn't even need to go through any of those things. You're in a world where education is just one click away. Like, you cannot imagine the amount of online certifications that you can do today for free, in addition to the ones that you can do that you can pay for. There's just so many things that you can do. And you know the funny thing with some of the civil servants, I mean, no disrespect to civil servants, you guys actually have a lot of time on your hands. So you can't say that there's nothing to do. So I think what you need to do is, again, who do you want to be? Like, identify your own path. Do you want to be the consultant? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? You have to figure out what you want to be and then start now to acquire that skill. So if it's a job you want to have after work, after your retirement, then go and acquire a skill that will make you relevant. Today, everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's talking about, I'm talking about technology for years. So go and acquire a skill around there. If you want to be an entrepreneur, or you probably want to be a farmer or whatever, go and acquire a skill. Look for someone that can mentor you. So I don't think that you're in any way disadvantaged. I actually think you have a lot more advantage than those in the private sector. Thank you.
If I must just say quickly, actually, also, that statement is not completely true, because Dr. Hare in the private sector went to go and do a PhD because he wanted to be in education. I mean, I had to go and do a lot of work in finance so that, because my husband once, they said to me, do you want to run this business or do you want to run it down? When every third patient and family that were crying about something, I was like, it's okay, they don't need to pay, you know, that kind of thing. So everybody has to acquire the skills. You just have to bridge the gap.
Can I just add that sometimes we're looking down on what we have. In the Plus Accelerator, one of the things that we lead people to do is a skills inventory. The truth is that you haven't taken time to realize everything that you have acquired, even from your job in the public sector. In the way you ask the question, you already talked down on it. You will be shocked the kind of negotiating skills that you have. You have a keen kind of wisdom to survive the public sector. And then you start to look at these rare skills that I acquired along the way. How can I apply them to solve a problem in the area of my passion? I recommend that you go through that process. You will be shocked that you're sitting on a gold mine.
Oh, just to add, sorry. By the way, there's a research that was published, I think, a week. It appears the job of the future is probably not technology. It's probably vocational skills. You can see what she's doing. it could be music, it could be art, it could be something you love. Because as technology takes over, human beings start to value things that are scarce. So don't just think that you're disadvantaged at all. I thought it was important to chip that in.
Thank you very much. I mean, I like the comments the speakers have made. 20, 25 years ago, you had all these eateries springing up around Lagos. Now you have people money from feeding people. Guess what? Some of them don't even cook. Someone does the cooking. The they're in is logistics, taking the orders and making deliveries. They can now get a larger audience. Remember, if you think there are none, you don't see. And when it passes in front of you, hiss. You hiss because you think it's a problem. Okay, so someone asked this question. He says, what of those who retired without planning and are now in the second half of life? What can they do now? I can hear a lot of murmuring. It looks like we have quite a number.
Is back. Sorry, I'm going to tweak that a little bit, because if you have been sitting here for the last 2 or 3 hours, even if you had not been thinking about it before, I don't think you want to put your hand up and say you're not going to think about it, right? I think the question we're not talking about, which I think you alluded to, is what if your health becomes a problem? What if your health really becomes a problem? So we are seeing not just the 70, 80-year-old gentleman with prostate cancer. We're seeing 19, 20-year-olds in Nigeria with colorectal cancer. And we're seeing 30, 40-year-olds. 2 weeks ago, a 34-year-old lady just got married, so actually, breast cancer. She can't go tell her boss, she says, because they still have children, and they just got married, and I think from the north, I have to planning. Everyone in this room, start to think about your health. So at 40, over 40, every year, I do birthday, or I give to myself, go and have your annual wellness. Come to my, but Mikey says it, because last US is just found to have breast cancer, annual wellness check. But the point of it is that it will, if it's being picked up from a routine check, and therefore it can be cured. If it's not picked up early, daughter from school who's going to tell me, Grandma, you're not running that fast. No, seriously, but that's why every day, you know, think about that of a story. People, what they do, life still, that's fine, but a lot of it, you need to look at so we can remain well. And when we remain well, the joy of going to the third one. Thank you.
Doctor, I think she was speaking of, and I tell and oxygen on a of oxygen is being whole. No excuse to execute. I'm not 100% still executing. You are whole.
Ask yourself, what do you enjoy? Even if you now, so if you'll be surprised with the amount of views you get. Before you know it, it's in your hands. So isn't any, like,
like you said, that's is. Thank you.
Do that person regret you platform start to make fall in how you into it, what you start there. This is the first, so I'll take it. I don't like this person in the room. Impact.
No, attitude, how much you put into it, like time that in hours, of course you get. Then when they're in an indigenous oil company, he actually remembered to do a and he remembered and I was back then years ago, you know, who will know what you have. Are you doing? Then who are you looking at other people or even try invest? What side? Don't just one place and feel that thing. No, certificate is not role models. We have mentors to them and find out what, and not everything, as he has said, not everything. Make that extra, commit to it for your company or training. Attend industry events and participate in this across your industry in different companies. And that you can't just sit down. All work for it.
So if you're still here, find myself. I will give you a copy of the card. Go and read those.
People above 60, people above 50, look at the fire in their belly, look at the things they're doing, take and yes.
Please keep clapping. Autographs. Applaud can, ladies and gentlemen, to join us and share. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And of course to our moderator, Mr. Bolao Joshua, thank you too. Thank you, Mrs. Adetu. Thank you. All right, we may have our seats. We're not done yet. Please don't. Yes, we're wrapping up, but please don't leave just yet. We close this event. We'd like to thank everyone who has joined us online. Thank you. You've joined of you in. Thank you very much for being here. Today, would like to thank you. Of course, there are still books. As mentioned, Dr. Babs came copies, and of course, this is Tara Fela Dorote with a few of her copies. Text screens will be putting up the barcodes there for you to scan, and then that takes you to the website. So you can go on the website and make your nominations and get to also see what exactly the 40 over 40 initiative, get more information there. Very, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, hasn't it been such a time today? Has it? Has it been an amazing time today? A round of applause for yourselves for being very engaging. Wonderful questions. And it's taken an entire army to make this event possible. From the team, the entire team at the Africa 40 over 40 initiative, I'd like to specially thank everyone who has worked tirelessly alongside Mrs. Bode and Mrs. Ndidi to make this possible. Please, a round of applause for them. Would also like to thank especially everyone who's been part of the platform Nigeria, the entire team that have been here working to ensure that we had a seamless transition from our media team to the engineering team. Ladies and gentlemen, please, an applause as we do this appreciation. Without them, the event would not be successful. The protocol team, somebody said to me this morning, did you get the memo? You're matching outfits with the protocol team. I said, well, maybe there's just some sort of protocol in me. So maybe you might see another career after this. I might be doing something related to protocol. My name has been, and my name is Osaume Akenzwa. A few people said I didn't mention that. And I have been the master of ceremonies for this event today. I hope I have made you the event alongside the other speakers. You are so kind. Thank you very much. Now I would like us to do something very, very important. We wouldn't leave this hall without thanking the convener of this event that has held for nearly 2 decades, who has helped us to ensure that platforms are provided for voices, leading voices in Nigeria and in Africa, to be able to shape our politics, our economy, and our social life, not just here in Nigeria, but in Africa. That person, the convener, I would invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to please rise. None other than the pastor of the Covenant Nation Global, Pastor Poju Oyemade, and Pastor Toyin Poju Oyemade. And I would like us to do something very special. I'd like us to chant, thank you, Pastor Poju. And hold on, I'll give us a count, and we're going to capture this. If you're online and you're still watching, please let's also see those comments in uppercase in the comments. All right? So at the count of 3, we're going to specially thank him. I remember having a conversation with Mrs. Ndidi a few days back and talking about how he had been very open, very committed to giving this platform and allowing this initiative to take front and center stage. So it's not easy. He is a man who is visionary, as you all know, and he has consistently, with the entire platform team, run this nearly 2 decades. So at the count of 3, ladies and gentlemen, if you feel like you have gotten value, it's not for everybody. If you have gotten value, not just today, but in the previous editions of the platform Nigeria, at the count of 3, we will chant, thank you, Pastor Poju, and then we will have a rousing applause. I want a thundering applause. Can we do that, ladies and gentlemen? Can we do that? At the count of 1. I'm reminded of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire program. 2. 3. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Pastor Poju and Pastor Toyin Poju Oyemade. Thank you for the platform, Nigeria. Let's keep the applause going. Let's show excitement. We are grateful. We're thankful. It has been worth our while. And may we continue to have many more impactful editions of the platform, Nigeria. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure. Osaume Akenzwa is my name. I want to especially thank you for coming. You have been very consistent. You stayed till the end. Happy Workers' Day once again. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the month and the year. God bless you.